Veeck repurchased the team in 1975 and promptly removed the artificial turf. Man, I love Bill Veeck. He was awesome. Moving out to center field were the bleachers, actual old school plank bleachers that were probably more uncomfortable than being Jeffrey Epstein's cellmate. Once again, Veeck was a pioneer, installing an actual shower in center field for fans to cool off during hot summer days. No, not a pool like in Arizona, a shower. Yeah, Comiskey was wild. Finally, we have the upper deck where the seats behind home plate were lucky enough to not have poles in front of them, making them premium tickets. Like most ballparks of the era, poles were needed to support the roof and upper deck, something we definitely take for granted today. According to Uncle Bob's Ballpark 17, there were seats in the left field upper deck that literally faced each other, and you had to turn your head to the right to see home plate. With all these unique and weird features, they don't top all the unique and weird things that happen here. The tradition of playing the national anthem at games was first done at Comiskey Park all the way back in 1918. There are some crazy facts around this. It happened during Game 1 of the 1918 World Series, but not before the game. It happened during the 7th inning stretch. America was just entering World War I, and it was performed by a military band that received raucous applause. Who was playing in this game? Babe Ruth, who was still on the Red Sox at the time. Wait a minute, the Red Sox can't play the White Sox in the World Series. And they weren't. They were actually playing the Cubs in Comiskey Park because the Cubs wanted to take advantage of a bigger stadium and sell more tickets. Could you imagine the level of shock if this happened today? I mean, the Cubs in the World Series again? From that game on, the anthem was played before games, adding the last two lines of "play ball" to the song. What's even crazier was that it wasn't even officially the national anthem at the time. It would be another 13 years before that would happen. The Red Sox won that World Series 4-2, cursing both teams for a long, long time. Speaking of a curse, the World Series the next year is the most infamous in White Sox history. We should know the story. The 1919 White Sox threw the best of 9 series, 5-3, as 8 players allegedly took bribes. History has different interpretations of this event, but most involve a narrative of the players being incredibly underpaid and folding to the temptation to fix the series and take payoffs. And there was probably organized crime involved. In the end, none of the players were charged criminally, but 8 of them were banned from baseball for life. However, they have been reinstated after 106 years. Side note, they're all dead now, just in case you were wondering. The first MLB All-Star Game was played at Comiskey on July 6, 1933. Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Al Simmons, Joe Cronin, Carl Hubbell, and Lefty Grove were just a few of the legends out there that day. Kicking off, the color barrier was broken at Comiskey Park when Larry Doby debuted for the Indians versus the White Sox. Doby would go on to hit 273 career home runs, have a 288 lifetime average, and be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame via Veterans Committee in 1998. Harry Carey was actually a White Sox announcer before he worked for the Cubs, and it was at Comiskey Park where he first sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" during the 7th inning stretch. Now, the White Sox weren't even his first gig. He actually did broadcasting in St. Louis from 1945 to 1969. Nice. And for the A's for some reason in 1970. His song was backed by legendary organist Nancy Faust, who played it live every time. Faust was a trailblazer, often trolling the opposition with songs after they struck out and playing the famous "na na na na, na 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 na, hey hey hey, goodbye" after wins. I cannot sing. For 40 years, from 1970 to 2010, Faust played the organ at both original Comiskey and new Comiskey, only missing 5 games, a couple on account of giving birth. She was also incredibly friendly and accessible, as her open-air perch at the stadium gave access to fans who absolutely adored her, as they should. She seems awesome. She's honored in the Baseball Hall of Fame with a display. All of this leads to the weirdest night in Comiskey Park history, which Faust got to witness in person. Disco Demolition Night, and you have to hear this. It was July 12th, 1979. The White Sox wanted to try something different during the intermission of a twilight doubleheader. The promotion, the team was going to declare disco, a popular form of music, dead, and this is real, detonate a crate of records on the field using literal explosives. The White Sox only expected 20,000 fans to show up for the game, but instead 50,000 people showed up and more started to sneak in as radio shock jock and star of the show Steve Dahl got the word out via the local airwaves. Another layer to this, the records that were to be destroyed would be donated by the crowd, so they didn't exactly know how many records they would be blowing up. As the discs accumulated and beers were drank and weed was definitely smoked, some fans recognized the danger and wanted to leave. They had trouble doing so as only one gate was open and the rest were padlocked to keep people out, not in. Side note, they only hired security for about 25 to 30,000 fans, and there were now 50,000 there. Stuff was brewing. Against the better judgment of all logic, at 8:40 p.m., Steve Dahl came out dressed in army fatigues on the back of a Jeep and drove around the field before he finally settled at the pile of records in the outfield, which was again rigged with explosives. The players wore helmets in anticipation. Some still warmed up, getting ready for the next game. And then the crowd began to chant, "Disco sucks. Disco sucks. Disco sucks." And then Dahl set off the explosives. The explosion was so big, it ripped a hole in the outfield with vinyl flying everywhere, a surreal scene developing before the crowd's stunned and equally impressed eyes. As the blast ended, the crowd noticed no security around, as most of them were now watching the gates. If nothing says anarchy like exploding records, the crowd rushed the field, and the situation turned from standard chaos to a scene from Kindergarten Cop. But instead of a classroom, it's 50,000 drunk toddlers having themselves a blast on a major league diamond. Fans began to climb the foul poles. The batting turtle was destroyed. The remaining records were set on fire. The bases were ripped off the field and stolen. A 21-year-old Michael Clark Duncan, the late actor from the movie Green Mile, ran around the bases, slid into third, and went home with a bat from the dugout. Bill Veeck got on a microphone and urged people to get off the field while a bonfire burned in center field. Harry Carey then grabbed a mic and unsuccessfully urged the shit show back to their seats as "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" ironically played in the background by, you guessed it, Nancy Faust. Then the Chicago PD showed up in full riot gear. The crowd in the stands cheered. Then they got to see justice delivered firsthand as the PD arrested 39 people and order was quickly restored. From beginning to end, the chaos only lasted for about an hour, and when things finally settled, Bill Veeck still wanted to play the second game. The umps were like, "Yo, there's a little crater in center field, so no." The game was then suspended and the following day forfeited to the Tigers, as according to the league, the White Sox had failed to provide playable conditions. You don't say. Luckily, nobody died, but the aftermath hurt for some people. Bill Veeck would sell the team 2 years later, and his son Mike faced difficulty finding a job after the incident, as even though his dad took most of the blame, Mike was the one running the show. He'd go on to buy a couple franchises himself. He was okay. Steve Dahl continued in radio as a shock jock legend and is still podcasting to this day. Disco still died. Can we do dubstep demolition night? Can that be a thing? Comiskey Park continued on until 1991 when its fate was eventually sealed. It had gotten old and the neoclassic movement had already started. It was time to say goodbye. Today, a small park with home plate, 2 batters boxes, and the foul lines mark the old site in Rate Field's parking lot. Yes, sometimes things change for the better, but it's nice to remember the weirdness of the past. Here's to you, Old Comiskey Park.
Edith Alexievich will throw the switch to turn out the lights here in Old Comiskey Park for one last time.
NFL stadiums represent the best in American sports architecture. Well, some of them. Yes, football is our #1 sport, and we go all out to see our heroes get concussed. But which city and team does it the best? What are the quirks and secrets of each stadium? We want to know. And can we bring in someone who's been to all of them to help us out? Yeah, this guy is going to help me rank them all. Critiquing Every NFL Stadium 2023 edition is coming up right after this. Want to know what's getting too damn expensive these days? Those stupid ass. And that's Ben, which you can view on his channel from the link below. Let's get into it. No surprise, this turd is ranked number 30. I've covered it in detail on this channel. Of course, we know all about the sewage, the overflowing toilets, the collapsing rail, the reduced seating capacity, and the awful turf which grinds through more limbs than a slaughterhouse in the fall. But did you know that this place also really sucks? Tom was actually not able to visit this summer.
I was only allowed on the outside of the stadium, and what I saw was not great. It is plastered with sponsorships. And like, listen, every single stadium has sponsorships, but this is plastered like head to toe with that. And it looked like an older building. It didn't look like it was very much taken care of. And even with sunglasses on, it was pretty bad.
This stadium is on the way out, and for years, despite its charm and amazing atmosphere, has had bottom-tier facilities for the NFL. And as they transition to New Bills Stadium, they've put some work into Highmark, but understandably, not much.
So there's actually going to be a major issue because they're building it right across the street. They're going to be demoing the old, like what Highmark Stadium is for parking. But the issue is that when that new stadium is built, they're still going to be demoing the old one, so you're not going to be able to park there. So for a while, there's going to be a significant lack of parking.
Another stadium slated for the scrapyard, the much maligned new Soldier Field has been a source of ire for Bears fans pretty much since the day it was rebuilt. As a compromise to not tearing the old Soldier Field down, the Bears just ended up with an okay stadium that couldn't solve Soldier Field's location problems. Now it's caught in the midst of a battle over where the new stadium will be, likely in Arlington Park. We'll see.
Worst stadium I've ever been to. I didn't get to go inside, but the Bears play there.
This one will be part of a massive renovation soon, one that might cause the Jags to be homeless for a couple years. But it's still hard to believe this place hosted a Super Bowl. The new plans look amazing. Tom, take it away.
That stadium needs to be renovated. But the things like that make it unique. They have the cabanas, which are so unique that you could rent out cabanas and you could rent out a pool. So like you could buy like 20-ish tickets and you have this little spot where it's a bunch of cabanas and there's a pool. Like you could sit in the pool and watch the football game be played. Like that's really cool. They have this whole space in the back of the end zone where they set up like bar tables and like you're in the back of the end zone, and like so they have like some cool little features about it, but it's definitely a stadium that needs to get renovated.
Also set for replacement, Nissan Stadium is aging but full of charm. At the time it was built in 1999, it was one of the cheapest stadiums ever, especially for the era, with half of the funding being public. However, it has a ton of character. The stadium is set for replacement in 2026 with a $2.1 billion dome.
It's kind of amazing that they've been able to do as much as they're able to in that space. Like everything is pretty aged. It definitely is in need of replacement, but it still has like this little charm. It's the only stadium in the NFL that has a dedicated space for its mascot. They actually have a dressing room. Stadium has gone through a couple of different name changes. So for example, like the concourse where they sell like all the concessions and all that stuff, they're little mini houses And the reason that they're mini houses is because back in the day, and I'm sorry, I forget the company name, but like it was a construction company, and so like that was their little like tipping the hat to saying, hey, like this is what this stadium is because of our sponsor. They also have the chariot that comes out, like there's a storage space in which they have the mascot and a chariot come out before like the game, and they have like a whole ceremony with like a sword and the whole 9 yards.
Rumored to be replaced, Cleveland Browns Stadium starred in a series of commercials along with Baker Mayfield. That didn't end poorly or anything. What's interesting is that the Rebrowns, technically an expansion team, have only known this stadium in their entire existence. Probably the most charming area is the Dog Pound, but like Tom, I share this opinion.
So that one was, I gave myself the self-tour when I went to go there for Monster Jam. And like another one, it was kind of just like a run-of-the-mill stadium. There wasn't anything that really stuck out to me of being like over the top. There wasn't a ton of like tech or anything like that. I didn't get to see, obviously, behind the scenes. But yeah, it's like pretty standard seats, like pretty standard, like old building that didn't really impress me a ton.
It's always better to just do it yourself, right? And instead of like involving somebody else, you know, maybe particularly against like outside of their profession, right? Like you would just do it by yourself.
You might be surprised to find MetLife ranked so low on this list, but even as a fan of the team that resides there, it's still a large, impersonal, and cavernous outdoor stadium in a giant parking lot with nothing really out there. Neither the Jets nor the Giants can really call this place their home. And even though other stadiums on this list have the same issues, MetLife overall just isn't that great.
It's always held in really high regard, and I think that just because its seat capacity is so high and it's like a larger stadium. But I agree, like it is very sterile, and it kind of just lacks some of the charm that it like of like, oh, like this is where football is played. Also like really inconvenient to get to. Like there's they have the giant mall that's there that they built like right around the time they hosted the Super Bowl, but there's like nothing else out there. Obviously like Manhattan is like, you know, relatively close, but it's kind of a huge pain in the butt to get to, and it's not really around anything else.
Yeah, except for that indoor skiing place, which I would never go to for any reason.
Kind of wild, the most distinct feature of this stadium was a video in which an augmented reality panther jumps around the place. Not any actual features. I will say the outside architecture is amazing, but the place is older and maybe in need of someday a full-scale massive renovation.
Yeah, so wasn't able to go in there. Saw on the outside, saw the big Panthers on the outside. So hold on.
No opinion. All right.
Yep.
Despite the charm of Charm City, I rank this one lower because of its age. But here's Tom to convince you that it should be ranked much, much higher.
So I actually was really impressed with it because I thought like, all right, this isn't gonna be like it was actually pretty damn nice. I mean, there's a bunch of things that make it really cool. I got to see like the real behind the scenes and do like the instant replay and actually do that and pull it up on the big board and stuff, which by the way, they all use the same tech and it's really, really funny. It's like a lever and then a wheel and that's it. There's like little things about M&T that make me love it so much. So for example, the place where it was built on was an old piano factory. And so like, if you look out a certain window, they have like these tiles that are set up outside that resemble piano keys and like a big piano, kind of like a little Easter egg for like where it came from. But the best thing about that stadium is the laundry room by far. And basically you walk in and it's just like industrial washers and stuff. And then there's a little side room that have like those, you know, like those beige bricks that every single like old building has, right? That you make it probably filled with like asbestos, and they're there, and it's signed by like almost every major star that has ever visited there, who has played football for like the away team, like Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino, Tom Brady. Like it's just an entire like small room filled with signatures.
Okay, Tom, that sounds really cool. Paycor is aging, and There are architectural issues with it, in particular choke points from fans leaving the stadium from the upper deck, and still no indoor practice facilities. However, Tom had some insight on the fan experience.
Yeah, so Paycor definitely, what's funny is the guts of it, like the workout room is pristine. Like the locker rooms are super duper nice. The field is a pretty standard field. Like it's a pretty standard like football stadium. I of course am biased because they let us play football on it, but like they have like the throne, they have the pro shop, obviously. Like I think the thing that stands out to me is not necessarily the stadium, but it's the fan experience at the stadium that the Bengals hold on. They have like a rookie orientation for fans who are new season ticket holders. They come and they get like a full-blown tour, they get a certificate, they get to go play on the field. Like they get to go do all that just because they're season ticket holders. But their stadium is like, again, the state-of-the-art stuff is more within rather than on the playing surface.
A multiple-time host of the Super Bowl, Raymond James is actually very similar in architecture to Nissan Stadium. Other than that, it's pretty standard except one main feature, of course.
I got to go on the pirate ship, which by the way, like that whole area was designed by Disney. So like that was a cool little Easter egg to have. But I actually liked the look of Raymond James because of how opened it was. Like that whole back end.
Yeah, I've been
was,
there.
Like,
It's
wide
all
open and you can literally see
like
right
the
into
whole concession
stadium.
area, that little
So
area that was just
like,
right there.
interesting view.
It's pretty cool.
I will say it kind of, I can see why Super Bowls are hosted there because it is so accessible from the airport. Like I said, I didn't get to see like the background stuff, but it has a pirate ship, so it has to go up a few rankings just because of the pirate ship.
How did he not get in?
No, this is not the name of a gangbang movie. This is the home of the 12th man. Since Tom got a pretty extensive tour of Lumen Field, I'll let him take it away.
Yeah, no, Seattle was cool. It is the smallest in terms of like square footage. Basically, I think he said it's like 6 stadiums into one because of how they're pieced together, because they need to be able to withstand earthquakes. And they have had like man-made earthquakes because when you had the beast mode run, like that one, like the Beastquake,
yeah.
that place is like brimming with history. There's a few teams that play there, right? So it's like the Seahawks, they got soccer that plays there. Like there's a few teams, but they kind of work together. Like when they host events, like they host like farm markets and stuff. But that is the Seahawks stadium. The reason why it's so loud there, because it's the second loudest stadium in the NFL, it was kind of like an accident. But it's because of the metal like awning that they have over it. Like it literally bounces off the field and then just reverberates in there. So they just turned up the music a tiny bit while I was on the field, and you heard it like blasting through there. So it's a huge home field advantage. And the best part is they have to make, it's in the contract, like with the city, they have to be in the top 10 in terms of ranking for like fan experience and things like that. And if they're not, they have to make renovations to actually fix that.
Hard to believe that this place is already 20 years old, and it's a huge upgrade to the Vet, which was an absolute dump. I never realized this, but the canopies on the side are shaped like wings to help evoke the Eagles theme. And the stair sets are shaped like 9-volt batteries that the fans love to throw. Just kidding, the Link is a tough place to play, and the windy conditions make it even tougher.
I did not go in. I was not allowed in, so I was only on the outside. But I might go next year, so we'll see.
Despite going through many name changes, turmoil with ownership, and Nathaniel Hackett, Mile High Stadium has been a steady, solid stadium in the NFL. It's not particularly wild or groundbreaking, but it is special to both Tom and miniature Broncos fans.
Yeah, that was just effing cool. Like they like the catwalk, which was insane, like just like going up a ladder and doing that, which is crazy. Miles does that pretty often. They also have like the statue of the horse on the other side. It's a nice stadium though. It's downtown Denver, which is like beautiful. The views are really cool. There's an amusement park that's right across the street. And then they have like the miniature Mile High that is in the parking lot, which is really cool. They went out of their way to give me an awesome fan experience and Perna a great one. So they're obviously going to rank higher for me, but like it'd be a cool place to see a game just because of how different it is.
So if you sleep with a midget on an airplane, do you join the Miniature Mile High Club?
This is a stadium that isn't about the stadium. It's more about the area around the arena that makes it what it is. Architecturally, it's pretty average, and to be exposed in the New England weather, though part of the experience probably isn't that pleasant.
The first time I was ever at Gillette was because I was doing an escape the room and didn't realize that it was Gillette. So like, because it's an outdoor mall, like they literally have an outdoor
Right.
mall and it's Gillette Stadium. Like they built this little thing. Like, but the point that I'm making is that they're constantly renovating. They're building that 21-story lighthouse that's right outside. They're constantly upgrading. Yeah, it looks like a really, really cool stadium, and there's a ton of stuff to do outside of the stadium. So even if you just go for like a visit to the Hall of Fame, because they don't do stadium tours, like just doing that, and then there's a million places to eat, like play games and do all that stuff. So like it
Right.
really is like directed towards fans.
For a stadium that is less than 10 years old, this one should be ranked much higher. However, it's been much maligned from the start. From its inequitable one-sided layout to its brutal effect on its fans from the sun, it surely has its issues. However, anyone who's been there says it's a good stadium. Let's get Tom's take.
It's a really nice stadium. There's just nothing around it. So talking about that, they used to have a restaurant within the stadium that was like open all the time, and then their Hall of Fame, like they call it the museum, is arguably like it's top 5 in the NFL, but it's only open like on game days and like the day before
Oh.
games because of COVID. And everywhere around them, it's all like industrial parks. They have like the one like Great Adventure theme park that's literally across the street, but it's all like office buildings and stuff. They also have a roof garden too, and they grow like their
Yeah.
own like herbs and spices and stuff that they like serve in the food. So it's pretty cool.
The stadium that will always be known as Heinz to me, duh, the mustard-colored seats, it still has done a good job of being an above-average stadium with outstanding charm and character, even if it's filled with yinzers.
Acrisure is effing awesome. It's Heinz,
Jeez.
but it's
Yeah,
it's effing awesome. So they just opened a museum / Hall of Fame this past winter, and it is gorgeous. Like it's really, really nice. They have an interactive part where you can go and like call plays, and they take a video of you, and it's like doing karaoke, but like you could get like Santonio Holmes like catching like the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, and you like just commentate it and stuff. So
Oh,
that's
that's
really, really cool. But the coolest part for me was you walk through just like, you know, like the outer concourse, and they have the Lombardi trophies there. Like they're sitting
The
there,
real
like
ones.
they're obviously encased and stuff, and they have like a whole like Hall of Fame of like notable players and everything. But it's like Steelers football. Obviously, you know, you got Pittsburgh, their locker room is super duper nice too. You have the Steelers one, which is right next to it. But as we were visiting, like they made it very clear, like this is where football is played. You can get disgustingly close to the field. Like, and there's really no barrier. Like someone could, like a player could walk on and be like, yeah, like shake your hand, because you're kind of just like level with them.
Despite being the second oldest stadium in the entire NFL, Arrowhead ranks high on this list for simply the overall fan experience, especially on game day. As a no-frills stadium, yes, it could be more up to snuff with modern amenities, but a game here simply is too much to ignore. Tom was unable to tour the facility, so just like a bank around Chiefsaholic, he was robbed. I rank Lambeau pretty high on this list, but not because it's a great stadium. I'm sure Tom, the Packers fan that he is, has plenty of thoughts on his home stadium.
There's some things that are super modern, and then there's some things that are just so traditional and will never change. Like they have bleachers.
Right,
Like,
right.
they have bleachers. They're not super duper comfy, but it's old school football, right? And if you don't like bleachers, you're not gonna like it. They have extensions now, like the new addition they put in a few years back. Like they actually have seats and they're like in the upper bowl. But the atrium is gorgeous. They have the restaurant. It's open, you know, every single day. So that's really, really cool. Their Hall of Fame is on site. That is beautiful. They've renovated that a bunch of times over the years. Their front office is there as well. But they built it up because the story that I always tell is that across the street from Lambeau for the longest time was a Kmart. Like you would drive through Green Bay, because it's just a small town, Green Bay,
Mhm.
and it'd be a Kmart, and then there'd be Kroll's Street, Lambeau Field, Titletown. They have a full football field. They have the golf. They have like breweries. They have hotels. They have this whole Titletown district, and it's beautiful. And their atrium, I will still say, is so freaking beautiful. But when you walk into the Lambeau proper, it is an old school football stadium. But yeah, for the most part, it is, in my opinion, obviously I'm biased as a Packer fan, it is a perfect blend of tradition and modernity, because it has both of those things clashing with one another.
Yeah, I mean it's not awful, but to me, I hate bleachers as a modern stadium enthusiast, just because they suck. They're bleachers. Also, really upset. I used to get upset when I would go to Kmart as a kid, and my parents would not get me an icy.
This arena, much like Jennifer Lopez, is hard to believe is close to 50 years old. Now, I have rated this place lower before, but Saints fans constantly lobby for it to be ranked higher. And yes, it has a ton of positives. It's clean architecturally, game day experience is incredible, and it is in New Orleans. Apparently it's getting upgrades ahead of another Super Bowl, so hopefully they will be installing more backup generators.
They're doing construction on it because they're going to be hosting a Super Bowl, so I couldn't get in because of that. But everything I've heard is it is insane to go see a game there. Just the atmosphere is insane, and I liked it because the gravity that I wanted to. That was one of the my top 5 places I wanted to get into, because obviously it was a focal point during Katrina. It has such a bigger, deeper meaning than just a football stadium. But yeah, I unfortunately was unable to get in.
The Texans are another one-stadium team, having occupied only NRG since 2002 and likely staying there for a while. The structure is amazing, still well thought out. Tom?
So that's another one where the Texans don't own their own stadium, so they have to go through a different company. And the two biggest tenants of that company are the Houston Texans and the Rodeo. The Rodeo brings in 3.3 million people or some crazy number like that per year. It's wild. It is just a massive stadium. It is just in terms of you stand on the field and look up, there's a lot of real estate there. But I will say, because I tested this out, I went to the very top of that stadium. Legitimately, every seat is amazing. There's no obstructed views, nothing like that. It is freaking gorgeous. There wasn't anything super flashy. There's little Easter eggs. So they have different bars on the concourse. And I think one's called the Spur, if I'm not mistaken.
Gotcha.
And you can always know where you are, because if you look on the carpet, they'll have spurs. So you could be like, oh, I'm at the Spur bar, just follow the carpet where it turns into spurs. And then there's another bar that's called I'll just make it up, called the Hat, and there's hats that are on the carpet. So it's kind of just little things for fan experience. It's pretty cool.
The home of Jake that looks like a snake, two-time Super Bowl host with a retractable roof, it is an oasis in the desert. And I'm a little jealous that Tom got to do a dance with the cheerleaders.
Super short tour, but yeah, it was really, really nice. I will be very honest, I did not expect it to be that nice, because I was oh, okay, I've seen outside pictures and obviously during games, and yeah, it just seems like a football stadium. But no, it's really cool in there. It just looks, everything's red, which is super cool. It's super duper on brand. They wheel their field in like they do in Vegas. Keep it on the outside and because it's all grass, and then they wheel it in when it's time to play. Yeah, no, that was a really, really nice stadium. I would have liked to explore more of it. We only had 20 minutes though, but it was nice.
The highest rated open air stadium on this list, Hard Rock, has really upped its game since the massive renovation in 2015, which essentially made it a new stadium. A giant tennis complex is also adjacent to the venue, which is huge for concerts and events. The roof covers 90% of the fans, however, the heat still makes football difficult for opposing teams to play here, especially for 1 p.m. start times.
Nope. I had to walk around the entire outside. It looks like the most unique stadium that there is besides SoFi, but yeah, no, I don't know.
When this stadium was opened, it probably was the top slot for NFL stadiums at the time. However, the sheen has come off of it a bit, and it is asymmetrical inside, but still really, really nice. No real wild secrets to this place, though. I wonder where the Ford family keeps their dignity.
I've been to Ford Field twice, so I got to go in for a hot second. But I actually saw WrestleMania 23 there. So like I've been in there before. But it is a very, very nice stadium. It's well done. Their pro shop, they completely renovated. Like that looks really, really beautiful. And it's just, yeah, it feels like, I use the term like football cathedral. It feels like that. It's right across the street from where the Tigers play. And yeah, no, I'd be interested to see an actual game be played there because I can imagine how loud it's going to get. But yeah, like that's where Lions football is played.
One of my personal favorites, they really just nailed it in terms of a design for Lucas Oil Stadium. From the outside, it looks like an old factory, and the inside looks amazing. What's really interesting though, the streets run parallel to the stadium, but it's actually skewed so that it aligns east to west to let natural light into the playing surface. And of course, we got to hear what Tom has to say.
Ooh, I liked Lucas Oil a lot. So Lucas Oil was like the first real indoor one that we got a proper tour of, and it was just impressive. Like it was impressive because they had the field suites. It was impressive because of just like the sheer size of it, the view, which is insane, of like you look at the back of the end zone and you just like see right through to Indianapolis. Yeah, it is a beautiful football stadium. They're hosting the Olympic swim trials there, so they're going to be building pools in the stadium. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they're literally going to be building pools there. So they have an underground like tunnel that goes to the hotels, so like all the players and stuff, like they can have privacy or
I didn't know that. That's a secret.
Oh yeah. No, they have like a whole bunch of underground stuff. It's really, really cool. And plus like it also was a cool moment because it's from Parks and Rec. So like being on the same field, I was like, hey, I watched this. So
It's hard to believe that Jerry World, also fittingly named the Death Star, which gets blown up at the end of every Star Wars movie, is already 15 years old. At the time it was open, the two TVs above the field were the largest in the world, but since then have been surpassed by other stadiums. A modern marvel of engineering and construction, renovations and additions are on the horizon.
And now they're doing a $300 million renovation to it, and it's still crazy. They told me, so you know, like the big board, like the big video board that sometimes get hit by like, punts and all that stuff, you could still fit the Statue of Liberty at the 50-yard line and it wouldn't touch that. The only thing that could make it slightly better is if they had those headquarters a little bit closer, like if you would go to the Star, because that
the Star is
area,
out in Frisco,
holy crap, that's an amazing space. But the stadium itself, like they have that area that a lot of teams are now copying, where you can watch like the team run out. So like they have so many things that are like exclusive for fans, but it's just such a massive space, and it looks like it could have been built last year.
The replacement for the Metrodome certainly went above and beyond with its unique design and roof system, which allows for God's natural light to shine in and watch Kirk Cousins choke away another playoff game. Though beautiful and efficient, the glass is known to kill the birds who fly into it often.
Yes, wasn't able to go in, unfortunately. However, it is one of the most unique stadiums I've seen. It's literally plopped in the middle of the city, and its architecture so different from downtown Minneapolis. But the thing that was really cool is I walked right up to the glass, and you look in, and maybe it's like 10 feet away are seats. Like it doesn't have like that big like concourse, at least where I was. You literally just walk in the front door and your seat's like right there. It looks beautiful. Like it looks state of the art.
Allegiant was ranked #1 on my list last time, however it's gone down a few pegs since. I still love the outside architecture and transparent roof, and from an aesthetic and engineering standpoint, the stadium is perfect. However, Tom has some pretty strong thoughts.
I don't think you would like it, because
Really?
the same reasons you don't like MetLife. You walk into Allegiant Stadium, you have no idea the Raiders play there. The ways that you find that out is if you are on like the really, really nice like concourses, like the ones that like you like the Champions Club, like that's filled with Raiders stuff. There's no Raiders banners. There's no Raider, like there's the pro shop and stuff. They're all black, like the seats are all black. They have like bars and stuff like that. And like you said, modernity, it's beautiful. Like aesthetically, it's really, really nice. But it doesn't look like the Raiders play there. The way that I feel about it is just like it's a space. Like, it feels like it doesn't really have a soul, to be honest with you. Like, they had to put on the video boards during the game because the fans were so unfamiliar with football to be quiet while the Raiders were on offense. Like, that's what it is. Like, again, as a stadium, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
As like holding the tradition of the Raiders, I think it fails.
Wow, that's pretty rough. Maybe they should use the giant torch as a crematorium for former Raiders, and that can make it less of an impersonable vibe. Since it was opened in 2017, Mercedes-Benz Stadium has been an innovator on all fronts of the stadium experience. Listen to the reasons why it comes in ranked number 2.
Yeah, that, for me, I think that might be my number 1 stadium.
Really?
It is that nice. That stadium is the most innovative stadium besides maybe SoFi, where like football is played and it's taken like seriously. And what I mean by that, it's not just like a concert space or anything like that. They have so much that has like pieces of Atlanta in there. It's artists, it's like local vendors as well. On top of that, the thing that stands out to me the most, besides how beautiful it is, the roof is freaking insane. It's their sustainability stuff is like crazy. Like, they have so many like solar cells that they're able to power all of their home games for the Falcons and also for Atlanta United. I think it's only 10% of the waste that they get goes like into landfills. Everything else is recycled or composted.
I had no idea that Megatron's butthole was that efficient.
And now, for the number 1 ranked NFL Stadium. It's just not surprising that a $5 billion stadium would end up number 1 on this list. It truly is amazing. And even though it has a roof, it's technically indoor/outdoor. And beyond that, it's an entire area and campus. Fun fact, the NFL actually rents the land for their headquarters from Stan Kroenke. Tom, fill us in.
Everything that I just complained about for the Raiders and what we complained about for like the Giants and Jets, the same exact thing applies for SoFi, but it makes up for it because of how insane it is. Like, again, no Rams, no Chargers stuff. They have their own, they have like 8 locker rooms. Like, they have individual locker rooms. So like the Rams have their own, the Chargers have their own, that they got like college, like it's insanity. The campus is insane. It's twice as big as Disneyland, like the whole entire campus. Like, and I think it's like 3.5 times bigger than Vatican City or some crap like that. It is enormous. You walk outside, like you're in the stadium, and it's like you're in a rainforest. They have like a whole like ecological site where it's like all plants that are native to LA that are just hanging out there. There's an art museum that's inside the stadium. Like, it's wild. It's basically what like Vegas is doing, but amped up to 1,000. They can host any event. They're doing the opening and closing Olympics. Like, they're hosting that, hosting a World Cup game, of course. Like, Taylor Swift, who's doing like 2 or 3 shows and all these other stadiums, doing 6 of them in SoFi. And there's a reason. Like, it is massive. Looks like a college campus, and just like, it's so different. Just the architecture, the engineering, it is beautiful. Like, but you could argue like it's more of an event space than it's like where you go to play football.
You know, like I hear, you know, SoFi doesn't have air conditioning. Does that affect it at all? Or, I mean,
No, because it's freaking California and the weather's like perfect. So it's an indoor-outdoor stadium and it's beautiful. Like, you get the wind that comes through. Like, no, it's they have the roof that they can put any message on. So like planes can see it. And it could be different. They can have one inside, they can have one outside, they can have like a whole video play on the roof of the stadium. Like, it is insane.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to me, and you're probably already subscribed to Tom Grossi because, you know, he's famous and stuff. I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to the outtakes.
If there's anything you want to say out there to all the fans that love both you and stadiums, now is your time.
Go see a game for the Falcons. It's amazing.
Okay.
Someone's breaking in.
Yeah, the kid's back. Sorry. All right. Thanks, Tom.
Yep, no
Love
problem,
you.
buddy.
All right.
Oh,
well,
shit. Tim Patrick just got carted off. Oh, shit.
What? Oh.
finalized. Now we're going to continue on some more things you need to know, but really quickly I want to shout out today's video sponsor, Underdog. If you like sports and you like winning money, then you've got to be on Underdog playing their pick'em game. Basically all you do is pick higher or lower on players so long. Could it possibly be opened up? There were a lot of rumors going around. It was taking a lot longer than usual for them to come to an agreement. Typically they would have already renewed the license a while ago. Well, it's officially official. Earlier this morning a tweet came across my timeline from Ari, my sports update, saying the NFL and EA Sports have agreed to an extension through the 2030 season for the league's Madden video game license. So we're going to talk about what all this means. We're going to go over an article from Insider Gaming as well. But if you are new to the channel and you never want to miss out on any of the updates around Madden or the college football game, make sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon on so you don't miss any of these important videos when they go live. Trying to get to 700k subscribers soon, so if everybody watching just subbed up, we can hit that number in a few days. So I think most people by now expected the license to get renewed. Obviously it did take a while, so that left the possibility open for maybe them to not renew the license. However, a few months back, Mike Straw of Insider Gaming did report, and I made a video on it, that the NFL and EA had pretty much already agreed to the partnership. It was just that some of the finer details were being worked out and they hadn't officially signed it yet. But then a few weeks ago, EA sold their company, which kind of came out of nowhere. So with that happening, we thought, well, maybe this could potentially mess up the deal that they had in place with the NFL. We really didn't know. There was just a lot of things going on, and everything was kind of left up in the air as to what was really going to happen. Well, like I said, today it's officially official. The deal is in place once again to go through the year 2030. We are now 20 years deep in the exclusive deal with EA and the NFL. And let's take a look at what Mike Straw of Insider Gaming had to say today on his report. He said, Madden NFL is here to stay. Electronic Arts and the NFL have agreed to a licensing deal to continue the Madden franchise through at least the 2030 season. This new deal will also keep the league's license exclusive to EA Sports. Insider Gaming was the first to report in July that an agreement was in place between EA and the NFL. At the time, it was expected that an announcement would come by the end of the year. It was known that it was a multi-year deal for more money in the history of the league's gaming license. When the deal was being negotiated, EA had made it known to the league that they were looking to give up exclusivity. The belief was that no other studio would likely try and compete with them right away, leaving them still with the de facto exclusivity, similar to what we have seen with the EA Sports NHL series. The NFL, however, preferred to keep the exclusive agreement intact and was considering negotiating with other studios to make it so. EA ultimately agreed on the NFL's request, and the deal was finalized shortly after that. As far as the timing of the announcement, many parties were ready to reveal it around the start of the 2025 NFL season. However, sources say that the negotiations and eventual agreement to sell EA and take it private led to a hold-up on anything being signed and made official. Once that deal was announced, work began again on getting everything finalized. Now we're going to continue on some more things you need to know, but really quickly I want to shout out today's video sponsor. The possibility of competition to exist, because we just feel that more products are just better for the consumer.
Welcome to the Prime Analyzer channel. This is what you can expect from this channel. An analysis of videos. That's correct. This is not a reactionary channel. You can expect great commentary. And last but not least, in education. Now it's time to analyze this video.
Yup. Bitch, and then you get my car. This is it right here. And I got the text message for proof. I've been trying to get my vehicle all day from him. I followed him up here in this car. I followed her. I used her to follow me up here. He chased me down. I had to literally run around in circles trying to jump in my car. Okay. And they had weapons, and he ran right into that house. I don't know. I think he's still in there. I think everybody else in the house left, but I think he's still in there.
What happened?
He stole my vehicle. He stole my vehicle.
So, parked here and he didn't let you have it?
No, I followed him up here. I have a tracker on my car. He don't know I have a tracker on my car. So I followed him up here.
Where were you
and he
guys
jumped
at?
out the car. We was over there on M2 at Millennium. I followed him up here. I jumped in the car, and he ran into the apartment. Then he came back out. When I tried to jump in my car from this car, he came back out, chased me around.
Was it just a disagreement? Or what happened? What started the whole?
It doesn't matter. He doesn't have authority to drive my vehicle.
We have to determine the reason why it happened.
He stole my car. He jumped in the car and he stole the car.
So, okay. Have you been in a dating relationship with him?
No. That's why I said he's not my boyfriend. Y'all saying he's my boyfriend, he's not my boyfriend.
Okay, relax.
Okay.
I need to ask a couple of questions so I can know how to categorize this. Okay? Because sometimes it's a failure to return, sometimes it's a stolen vehicle,
I never
sometimes.
gave him, no, he stole the vehicle, and I have the messages. My neighbor's a witness because my neighbor also was on the phone with him. I gave the neighbor his number. My neighbor was also on the phone with him trying to get him to return the vehicle. I told the neighbor I was going to call the police, and she said, don't call the police. He's had the vehicle since, I don't even know how long.
So, how long haven't you had your vehicle?
Since this morning.
This morning, okay.
I also have his home address. But
Does he have keys to the car?
No.
How did he get in the car? Do you know?
He stole the keys and put them in his pocket. He ran to the car and he jumped in the car.
Okay, stop right there. How did he steal the keys? Like, how was he? Was he with you? Was he in a house with you? Like, did he steal them out of your pocket? Did he push you down?
He fought me and grabbed the keys out of my hand. He also
so you had an argument this morning?
Yeah, he grabbed my phone. Yeah, he grabbed my phone.
What time was this about?
Thank you.
I can check.
Okay.
Thank you.
You ever let him use the car?
No. I have all the messages telling him return my car.
Okay.
It probably was about, I'm not even sure.
If you were to guess.
If I were to guess, 11, maybe like 11 this morning.
11, okay.
How do you know this guy?
We talked like.
We got action game. Fuck.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Like, I'm gonna take your car. What was the deal? Like, why would he just take your car?
He took my phone and the keys. And he stole the keys. We were fighting. He took the phone. He took the keys.
Right,
That's it.
we're just
He threw the phone. He threw the phone. I had to
Fuck.
have my neighbor drive
Fuck.
to go look for the phone.
I
Try
should've
to throw
threw
the
that
phone in the
shit.
lake. I was able to retrieve my phone. This was earlier this morning. And I told him it's a track on the car. He didn't return my car. He never came back with the car. So I ended up calling her and we followed.
Fuck, this
Came
shit.
up here and I seen him. So he parked the car on the other side. So we were running around. There's probably witnesses out there. We was running around trying to get in my car, and he kept trying to chase me down. He also had another male in the vehicle that he went and picked up.
What's he look like? You got a picture of him?
The dude?
Yeah.
Tackle this nigga, man. Fuck.
Yeah, he went and picked up another male in my vehicle.
Fuck.
This is him right here. This is when he was chasing
Fuck.
me. I think that's the weapon he was doing.
Good shit, bro. Fuck me. On a rematch? Sure.
Want a rematch?
Yeah, I'm with it. That's fine. It's up to you, though.
You on Xbox or?
No, I'm on PlayStation.
I gotta add you on EA.
Okay. Fuck. I fucked this game up. I had time with 2 timeouts. I could have ran the ball. Fuck me, man. Alright.
Throw.
No, throw it up. No. Fuck me.
You want a rematch or no?
Titanic from 1997 is a film that a lot of people on the internet just love to hate. Partially because it was probably so successful. It's just one of those strange cultural phenomena where the more popular it gets, the more people don't want to like it. But if you've watched this channel in the past, you'll know that I'm a big fan of it. And the reason for that is it's one of the films that got me really interested in Titanic in the first place. This is mainly because it was done really well. The film gets a lot right, especially when you consider that this is kind of like the era where Hollywood was pumping out some dubiously historically accurate films, which were still great, but kind of played with history a little bit. Titanic did its best, thanks largely to the hyper-focus and the energy of James Cameron, his drive to get things exactly right. Titanic did its best to do just that. But there's a couple of times where the movie falls down in really weird ways. There are certain parts of the film that I watched today and cringe a little bit. So instead of blindly praising the film, which is what I tend to do, I thought today instead we'd look at some of the little annoying details that Titanic got wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your friend Mike Brady from Ocean Liner Designs, and these are some errors from the film Titanic. So some of the errors in the film Titanic we can't actually hold against James Cameron and co. We've since learnt a lot about the way Titanic sank and some of the things that happened. So some of the commonly cited mistakes in the film I'm not going to harp on about, and I think it's unfair to attack the film for it, because we just didn't know, or at least James Cameron and his crew didn't know what we know today. So one of those things has to do with the angle of the ship sinking and the angle of its breakup. So in the film we can see it getting to this crazy 45 degree angle, and then it breaks, and we now know that just couldn't have happened. The hull failed a lot sooner on. There was an analysis done in the 2000s, close to 10 years actually after the film was made, that showed that Titanic's hull reached peak stresses at around about the 23 through 30 degree angle mark. Now that's a pretty extreme angle. It, from the lifeboats and from people in the water, may as well have been 45 degrees, because when you have something that big roaring up out of the water, or as Louis Bodine in the film puts it,
finally she's got her whole ass sticking up in the air.
Thank you, Louis. Rearing up out of the water, sure enough, it's going to look like it was 45 degrees, and that's probably how you'll retell it for the rest of your life. But in reality, it was probably a little less, and certainly no less impressive, and that's where Titanic broke her back. Now that's a knowledge gap thing that we can totally excuse them for. This other one is actually a deliberate mistake. This is a little bit different. In the film, Titanic sinks on a very even keel. You can see that right at the end as the ship is plunging into the ocean. There's not much movement from side to side. The ship is obviously going down by the head, but it's very stable. And Titanic did sink on a really stable, even keel. Fortunately, she flooded very evenly. The ship's engineers and crew spent time actually trimming the tanks and making sure that the ship would sink evenly instead of rolling over, which is what ships tend to do when they sink, as we learnt relatively recently with the Costa Concordia. But the night Titanic sank, the ship did sink on an even keel, but not that even. There was still a little bit of a list. The list is what you get if a ship is down on one side, left, port, or right, starboard. So Titanic, we know, alternated her list as different parts of the ship flooded through the night. Now, right at the end, the list did stabilize out and the ship did sink on a fairly even keel. But throughout the night, it alternated between 5, maybe 10 degrees from one side to the other. Now, Cameron and his team knew this, but they ignored it. And the simple reason for that was that in filming a Hollywood production, Cameron and co decided to use a almost life-size reproduction of the ship. Now, this set is one of the most epic ever produced for any Hollywood production, in my opinion, and I've covered it in some more detail on the channel. But simply put, dropping this set down by one side and then changing the list and then trying to make sure it was the same across different scenes and there weren't any major discrepancies would have been a huge, huge challenge. And for the production, it would have added heaps to the budget, and obviously they just decided to ignore it. And again, this is one of those things that when it comes down to historical authenticity, we can give them a pass because, hey, they built like a 90% scale replica and sank it, and it shows. Like, Titanic holds up really, really well, in my opinion. It looks fantastic. So, okay, yeah, it doesn't have the list from side to side, but we can excuse them for that. What I'm not going to excuse is this.
The ship's too big with too small a rudder. Doesn't corner worth a damn.
This is one of those pervasive myths that exists to this day, partly because of things like the film Titanic. So let's unpack this for a minute. How do we know Titanic did not have too small a rudder, wasn't a bad turning ship? First of all, Harland and Wolff, the shipbuilders, knew their stuff. Like, they'd been building ships a very long time, and they'd built hundreds of them. And they knew very well what a maneuverable ship should look like, should include. Titanic's rudder was like 5-6 stories tall. It weighed around about 100 tons. It was a monster of a thing. It was extremely powerful. It had a set of steering engines, which were miniature steam engines at the top of it that could actually control the steerage, and it could get hard over from one side to the other in a fairly quick amount of time. It's not necessarily about the size of the rudder for a ship's maneuverability, but its relationship with the propellers having the wash of water over them. You don't need a massive rudder. You actually just need a slight diversion in the flow of water over the rudder to actually get the ship turning. So the two pieces of evidence we can put forward to know that Titanic did actually have a large enough rudder for a ship of its size is, first of all, on the night of the sinking, the ship's lookouts, Fleet and Lee, spotted the berg with about 500 yards or so to spare. And they rang down and they alerted the bridge. The bridge probably spotted the iceberg at around about the same time and actually already knew what was going on, and so had initiated the turn. They struck the berg around about 35 to 40 seconds later, and it wasn't a head-on collision. They'd spotted the berg, and the berg was essentially stem on to the ship like you see in the film, like perfectly in front of the ship. From the time it took for that 35 seconds to elapse, Murdoch on the bridge, the first officer, had either been alerted to the iceberg or spotted it himself, telegraphed down to have the ship's engines stopped, and slowly Titanic's bow began to turn away from the iceberg. But suffice it to say, they almost made it. We know that because the damage was so slight. We know the damage was actually not a big deep gouge. It was really like a bumping, grinding motion that opened up some of the plate seams and then allowed water in. They almost got out of the way. So in 30 seconds thereabouts, Titanic's crew were able to spot the iceberg and turn their ship almost out of the way. Almost. We're talking centimeters, but they didn't quite get it. And unfortunately, yeah, they had that bumping motion around, down the side of the ship, and the berg opened up the plates. Now that is a very impressive response time, considering they almost got their ship out of the way. That 30-40 second amount of time, if you just count that off right now in your mind and say, gee, do you think you'd be able to get a ship that big, 45,000 tons doing top speed, 22 knots, out of the way of an iceberg like that? It had to have been quite maneuverable. Titanic's maneuverability had already been tested during her sea trials. She was put through a series of tests, and her turning was found to be quite satisfactory at the tests. They threw the wheel hard over, one direction, then another, and sure enough, the ship could turn just fine. And another piece of evidence that tells us that Titanic's rudder was fine is her sister ship Olympic. Olympic had a long and very successful career. In fact, Bertram Hayes, who was Olympic's wartime commander during the First World War, praised Olympic's maneuverability and said she was one of the most maneuverable ships he ever had the pleasure to command. So that speaks to the maneuverability of Titanic indirectly as well. So was this a film mistake? It could just be a character error. This is Brock Lovett, after all, explaining things the way he sees it. But annoyingly, to this day, people still think of portraying actual historical people in unfair ways. And one person that springs to mind straight away is Bruce Ismay. Bruce Ismay was the president of the White Star Line, Titanic's parent company, the owner, and he was also heavily involved with the International Mercantile Marine, which was a large conglomerate that essentially controlled a number of shipping lines, including the White Star Line. And he is always portrayed as this moustache-twirling, Dick Dastardly style villain, and that is a very long story to unpick, and we've actually got a video coming out about him this week, I think, on the channel midweek, so you might want to check that one out. But in the film, something happens that's very important. You might miss it if you kind of blinked, but it's this conversation.
So you've not yet lit the last 4 boilers?
I would prefer not to push the engines until they've been properly run in.
Now, this is based on a real piece of testimony. First-class passenger Elizabeth Lyons was sitting in the reception room and overheard Bruce Ismay and Captain Smith having a conversation. Now, she related to the inquiry that Ismay was discussing Titanic's speed and the possibility of putting more pressure onto the boilers. Now, this has been interpreted as Ismay himself actually putting pressure on Captain Smith to speed the ship up to make it into New York ahead of schedule. They were meant to arrive Wednesday morning, and the theory goes that Bruce Ismay wanted to make record headlines and get in on the Tuesday night. But there's actually a lot of evidence that suggests Ismay really wasn't that keen on the idea at all. So first of all, in this film, Ismay is very clearly putting pressure on Captain Smith.
Glorious end to your final crossing. If we were to get into New York on Tuesday night and surprise them all. Good man.
But that's not what Lyons said she heard. She said this. Now, that's a very distinct difference. This can be read a number of different ways. To my mind, this sounds like Bruce Ismay is actually just making an observation. Hey, we're actually doing really well. The engines are working, the boilers are working fine, we can put more steam on. Gee, at this rate, we'll probably even beat Olympic into New York. That's it. Not go out with a bang, AEJ. Big difference. There's actually even more evidence to suggest that Ismay was averse to the idea of an early arrival. Famously, Ismay actually saved his own life by getting into a lifeboat. And to be fair, the film actually shows it in a realistic way. It was at a point of the sinking, according to Ismay and others around him, where there weren't any people around, there certainly weren't any women and children around, and so he stepped into the boat and got away from the ship. And as the film also shows, he didn't watch it sink because he couldn't bring himself to see his creation go down. But Ismay's fatal error was in making an enemy out of William Randolph Hearst, who controlled much of the media over in the United States, who then created a global smear campaign against Ismay. Now, we're talking some really ridiculous stuff. Famously, there was one newspaper spread that showed names of the dead, the famous and the wealthy like John Jacob Astor and others who had died on Titanic, and then under the name saved, just put Ismay's name. And it worked. To this day, Ismay is remembered as the villain, the one who essentially drove Titanic to her doom. But those quotes actually reveal a guy who probably wasn't really that way inclined. Yeah, he was definitely a businessman, and he was very proud of what he and his company had accomplished. But it seems to me that he always would prefer to defer to the captain's judgment rather than put pressure on them in any way, and even pushed back on his colleague's suggestion to get Olympic into New York earlier. So he seems to me to be a guy who really isn't sitting there kind of twirling his moustache and just trying to save a buck or get his ship in early to try and make headlines necessarily. More so a guy who's just very proud, excited about what's going on. And it's a little bit annoying to see the film that a lot of people look to kind of get their information on Titanic, understand the history of what's going on, to portray him this way as a villain. I don't think he was a villain. I think he was just an excited businessman. Now, another one of these unfair characterizations is First Officer William Murdoch. In the film, he can be seen doing stuff like this. Now, again, this is a real person. This is a guy that actually existed. He was a White Star Line veteran. He had done very well to get himself to this position as first officer on Titanic. And in fact, he was going to be the ship's chief officer. So he knew his stuff. He was no incompetent. But the film kind of makes him out to be either easily distracted when he is watching Rose and Jack instead of keeping an eye out on his duties. He's accused of shooting passengers. At one point, he even kind of seems to take a bribe. And then the film, right at the end, even postulates as to his death. But we don't know that any of this is true, especially not the first few things there. There's no evidence of Murdoch doing anything else that night other than trying to save as many lives as he could. Murdoch was in charge of the boats on the starboard side of the ship, and from the moment that Smith gave the order to put women and children first into the boats, he did it. He followed that order to a T, filled boats with women and children, and then allowed male passengers to join them. Whereas on the other side of the ship, on the port side, Second Officer Charles Lightoller was only allowing women and children all men had to stand back and that the boats were lowered half, and sometimes even less than half, full. Murdoch died with the ship, and he died a hero. He'd spent the entire night getting as many people away as possible. And it's really unfair to see him characterized this way. This, again, was a real guy, and I know for a fact that his family, who still exist, his descendants, are really unhappy with the way that Murdoch was portrayed. Thanks to accounts from passengers like Eugene Daly or George Reams, we get the impression that there probably was gunshots and, you know, passengers potentially being frightened away with guns or even actually being shot at if they were trying to rush the boats. There are even hints of an officer actually shooting themselves and testimony to that effect from a number of passengers, but all of the details are conflicting, and we certainly can't level a finger and say who it was that actually did it. And so I think that by showing Murdoch doing these things and painting him to be a certain way, I think is pretty unfair, because again, films and media are the way that people consume history and learn about it. So I think this is a really unfair characterization. Lastly, and this is a really pervasive one as well, are the final moments of Thomas Andrews, the ship's chief designer. Now, right at the end, there's a quick interaction between Andrews and the main characters. He's seen in the smoking room, the first class smoking room, at the stern of the ship. Now, the first class smoking room was where gentlemen passengers would gather from first class after dinner and play cards and converse, in very much the style of a English gentleman's club. Now, in the film, Andrews is there, kind of in a state of shock, and fair enough too, I would be. I'm sure all of us would be. And he's even seen fixing the clock's time, which is a cute little detail that alludes to his eye for perfection. But it's not really true. It's not really the way it played out. It's inferred in the film that that's the way Andrews died, that he stayed there and was lost with the ship. Now, this is actually based on some testimony from a steward. One of the Veranda Cafe stewards went on to say that he saw Andrews supposedly around about 2 o'clock in the morning, maybe after 2:05. But according to the book, On a Sea of Glass, the truth is actually a little more interesting than that. It turns out that the quote attributed to this steward and the time attributed to that sighting of Andrews is kind of a bit of a guess. Nobody really knows when Andrews was in the first class smoking room. It seems likely that he actually went there at some point, maybe around about 1:40 in the morning, to gather his thoughts. Until that point, he'd been going around giving life belts out, trying to help people into boats and doing his best to prevent a panic while evacuating his ship. It seems that he might have gone to kind of take a break and maybe gather his thoughts, but he didn't stay there. In the film, it shows Andrews right at the stern of the ship, away from the action zone. As the Titanic is sinking and the bow is getting lower, the aft boats have been launched, and all that's left to do now is to lower the collapsible boats right at towards the bow below the first funnel. By putting Andrews right at the end, away from the action zone, it kind of looks like he's checked out and he's accepted his fate and he's staying away from the drama of it all. But there was a sighting of Andrews right at the very end, and he was much closer to the action. Mess steward William Fitzpatrick says that as Titanic took her final plunge and the bow disappeared beneath the ocean, he saw Thomas Andrews and Captain Smith leap into the ocean from near the bridge. Now, this sounds much closer to Andrews' character. He was somebody who was very keen to get people off the ship. He had overseen much of the evacuation from different parts of the ship. He had given, like I said, life belts out. He was very, very keen to make sure that people were safe. And it seems totally out of character for him to kind of check out and go into a daze, because there's no evidence at all that this guy was zoned out at any point in the sinking. He might have taken a moment to go to the smoking room, gather his thoughts, and then move on. But it seems much more likely that he was in the action, in the heart of it, trying to help where he could evacuate the ship. Again, by showing Andrews checked out away from the action zone, it might be a little bit of an unfair mischaracterization of this guy. You might walk away from the film thinking he did his best, but then maybe he gave up. But it's not true. So there you go. You guys know I'm more of a rivet counter kind of guy. I'm not so much into the human stories, character kind of thing as far as the Titanic story goes, but these are some little errors that just irk me a little bit. I think mischaracterization of real historic people in a film that is largely based on history with a big fictional element is a little bit, aside from being insensitive, is a little bit irresponsible, because this is kind of how we take history in. This is kind of how we now understand things to be. Not everybody has the time to read big, dry books about this stuff. It's probably why you guys are watching my YouTube channel right now in the first place. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this curious look at some errors made.
That was decent. That was decent.
What's going on, guys? Chase Daniel here. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel. Head on over to the Patreon page. You're going to get this full breakdown, even longer version, a little bit more detailed.
Throw this shit through the screen, fam. What the fuck is going on?
We had to break down Justin Fields and tell you the real reason why Justin Fields got benched. Let's get into it. All right, Justin Fields. Man, a couple things. I had to do it. I had to figure out like the reason he got benched. And look, I'm a huge Justin Fields fan. If you watch this channel, you guys understand, hey, this is what I feel about him. This is what I think about him. And this has nothing to do with him as a person, but I'm going to be pretty critical of not only Justin Fields, obviously other than Garrett Wilson. There's just been no one on that offensive side of the ball that has given this team any spark whatsoever. The offense seems bland. It seems out of whack, and just really predictable. And this is a Panthers defense that I think is good, but here they are bringing pressure off the side. And like, what are we doing? Like, he's trying to throw a screen. This is a simple run game. It's inside zone, and you're taking the back down the middle of the field, and everyone's just reaching to the right, but you have this receiver here who's standing wide open. Now you're thinking, okay, Chase, hey, why did he throw this? Well, if you see a nickel pressure, which number 7 started here, he went up, he decided to blitz, and when you decide to blitz, all right, it's nickel pressure, you're going to say, hey, all right, throw this. Pretty simple, right? But he decides to not throw it. I don't know why. We don't block the backside D tackle. He doesn't hand it. And it's just, this is play 7 of the game, right? You're inside zone. And you're reaching. You're reach blocking. He backdoors him. You're either going to hand the football off to the running back. This is not a zone read. So it's not a zone read. You're going to hand the football off to the running back, or you're going to throw it all the way out there. And you see the nickel pressure right there. Just, if anything, just hand it off. If you have any idea, I don't know if the ball slipped, but also look how low the ball carry is. Like, that's hard for anyone to try and do that. And then we miss back there, and we just get ourselves in a situation where it's just not good. I mean, look, full inside zone. I'm trying to see his eyes. He sees. He's looking right at 7. So 7 blitzes, this is what they're telling him. Hey, throw the advantage throw, which is the bubble. The running back's not in the way. The running back is doing exactly what he's taught to do, and that's bend down and get out of the way, but just not the start. That was play 7. This is play 10, all right? So now we put him under center. We motion out here. We try to get a man zone read. You got to figure out why we're motioning. Are we trying to get man zone reads? Are we trying to tell what coverage is? Are we trying to get leverage for blocking?
Good ass defense, man. Good ass defense, X. Come on, man.
Why you motion.
Good ass defense.
And I like this. This is a deep shot down the field.
What are we doing? Come on.
You can't just launch
Let's go put the ball in the box.
Like, I know you're trying to take a shot, and here's exactly what they're trying to do. So they have this. They motion in to get a man zone, because you're not going to run this play in man. And then you motion this guy over here to get 4 hands on this defensive end, which I like that. And then you're going to run up. You're going to try to grab this safety right here, and then you're going to run like a circle post, which means, hey, you're going to the corner, then you're going to the post. And your whole read right here is based on this dude right here. So they have exactly what they want, but he has to understand, once he comes off the fake, his eyes should be right here. He should see this safety running back. So this is just good coaching on the defensive side of things. If it's not there, I understand you're letting a guy come scot-free after 4 hands on him because he goes inside. I just don't like the idea of you launching it up and it's double covered, covered. You're an elite runner of the ball. And if you're an elite runner of the football, you have to be able to move. I feel bad a little bit for Jets fans. It just seems like they haven't been able to find a quarterback. Tyrod Taylor might give him a spark. Justin might be good. Justin might come back and be fine. But if you know you're getting help, your first step should not be out. Your first step should be in. He should fit in the D gap right here. A, B, C, D gap right there. He beats him inside, which is awful. And he just completely ruins it. He's lucky this didn't get intercepted. All right, next play. 3rd and 9. All right, 3-by-1 bunch. There's a tight end, 3. All right, so they played a lot of shell. I don't know why they didn't run the football a little bit more. And this is Tyrod. All right, next play. I didn't realize Tyrod came in for a play, then Justin went back out. All right, here we go. Next play, motion over, see what they're doing there, all this stuff, right? It's just a simple naked route. You're doing all this stuff to try and juice up. I mean, look, 2 backs, motion over, I get that. You have an over route. Why are we doing this out there? So you motion them over, and then you do this. It's just a lot of stuff for nothing. Nothing about this motion or this second ancillary motion gets them to switch anything they're doing. And then you miss the throw. So it's a simple naked route. So you have a corner. The spacing's pretty bad too. You have an over at 14, and you have a slide route. So you should read 1 to 2 to 3, but it just doesn't really match up with what they're doing. So you motion over, you're on a 2 tight end set. I like that. I get that. Wide 9, which you're inviting a wide 9 if you bring someone over there because he doesn't move in. That's very difficult
that was a fucking touchdown.
Sliding 32 there, and you just have someone in your face, and because of that, watch his arm angle. His arm angle drops down, and he misses a wide open guy. It's just tough. Let's watch it from this view. Right? Motion out. Here we go. I mean, we're trying to get this guy an easy completion. It's just not working. All right, here we go. 3rd and 10. So you got 10 yards to get it. You're backed up.
Oh, punt the ball.
All right, they're trying to do some crazy stuff. And you're throwing a bubble on 3rd and 10. Like it's a run, and you have nickel pressure again, so that was their plan. I get that, but why? I mean, this should tell you everything you need to know. Is
too much.
They're not trusting Justin
Too much.
to throw the football down the field, and then you get flags, and it's just a cluster to me, man. Like I think he checked to it. He did, so he's given that signal. I just don't. Is he not trusting himself? Like that might be a reason, right? You see him up here. He's checking to it. I don't know what play they had, but they didn't have the play they wanted. I know that because you're in your inside zone. You're checking to all that stuff, and then you're throwing a bubble. And you're blocking down the field, and you just put yourself in a bad position. All right, a few more here. 2-by-2, motion over 3-by-1. All right, I can see why you did that. Somebody moved. All right, we're cooking with grease here. Oh, then you got pressure, and we got.
Let's go, gang.
I mean, you knew. It's just this is hard to watch because not all of it is Justin's fault. You have a hitch, you have an inside fade, you have here, there, and it's sort of like meshish times. Hey, if you have this versus man, throw this. If not, then you're 1 to 2 to 3, right there. And so that's a little bit struggling, but it's one of those things where you can't protect, you can't do anything. 5-man front. bring in pressure. You're in scat protection. If you're throwing it, you got to have 6. And another thing too is if you see that squeeze down, so you're leaving this last guy open, he has to throw that if he knows he's hot. Like, he has to throw that. He can't take a sack right here. This is a tough watch. Motion over. He has to be aware of where the pressure is coming from. Look, it's not all on Justin, but man, this is a tough watch because you're, first of all, left tackle and left guard squeeze down, block, scot-free. You can understand what's happening, right? Like, it's not good. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Really appreciate you guys. Head on over to the Patreon page right now.
The Chambers Brothers. Their story largely inspired the movie New Jack City, with a character, Nino Brown, and his crew, the Cash Money Brothers, putting Wesley Snipes on the map as Nino Brown. But the Chambers Brothers were even more grittier, a family operation that redefined drug. The Chambers Brothers came out of a world where you had to fight just to survive. They were born down in rural Arkansas, Lee County to be exact, a place where poverty was the rule, not the exception. On top of that, de facto racism made it nearly impossible for black families to climb up the ladder even if they worked themselves to the bone. Larry, Billy Joe, or BJ, Willie, and Otis Chambers were just 4 out of 14 kids in a household that had more mouths than it ever had money.
It was a real hotbed. Racism was a real hotbed. Even at one time, one of my brothers was walking up the road. I'm in a little small town called Lee Grange, Arkansas. His friend was riding a motorcycle, actually deliberately ran over my brother. And nothing was dead. But that was the type of stuff that we could expect back then.
Life was so rough that sometimes they'd sneak food out of white neighbors' buckets after dinner, scraping together whatever leftovers were there. That's the kind of upbringing that burned survival into their DNA early on. When they finally made their way up to Detroit, they weren't looking to play small ball. The drug game was already bubbling, but a lot of the older dealers had limits. They saw crack as too chaotic, too destructive, something that would bring heat they didn't want. But the Chambers Brothers leaned all the way in. They weren't just hustling, they were building an empire. They ran things like a corporation, with a clear structure, rules for their runners, managers to keep things in order, and even marketing tricks. We're talking 2-for-1 deals, discount coupons, and word-of-mouth branding that made addicts feel like they were part of a system. This wasn't sloppy street corner hustling. This was organized business. At one point, they were said to control over half of Detroit's crack market. On their best days, they were making anywhere from $250,000 to $3 million per day.
What do you feel like the most y'all ever brought in a day?
Well, we had got to a point where we was making at least $250,000 per day, every day.
Damn.
Every day.
Their headquarters were infamous, an apartment complex called the Broadmoor on East Grand Boulevard and Ferry Street. If that sounds familiar, it should. The movie reimagined it as The Carter, the fortress-like housing project in New Jack City. The Broadmoor was their castle. You didn't just walk in there unless you belonged. They had teenagers acting as lookouts, guards, and foot soldiers, most of them brought in from Arkansas. These were kids who'd grown up broke, and the Chambers sold them on the dream: cars, jewelry, women, fast money. Billy Joe, who barely stood 5'5", was the brains when it came to business. He wasn't the loudest or the flashiest, but he knew how to make money multiply. He'd flip properties like car washes and corner stores into drug hubs, hiding operations in plain sight. The whole thing was so tight that it was almost impossible to take them down, at least in the beginning. But no empire that big goes unnoticed forever. The Chambers Brothers' flashy lifestyle became their downfall. They were rolling around in luxury cars, dripping in jewelry, throwing money around like it would never run out. That kind of attention draws eyes, and pretty soon, law enforcement had them under a microscope. Things really started unraveling when Larry's ex-girlfriend, Patricia Middleton, turned informant. She knew the ins and outs of their operation and handed all over to the feds like a roadmap.
At better, we get a field goal.
Was that the Chamber
At
Brothers
worst, we go to
basically
overtime.
helped build their own
not
case.
turn this
Larry and his
fucking ball
right-hand
over.
man, Jack Frost Jackson, loved recording themselves. They'd film hours of footage showing off stacks of cash and expensive houses.
Should we throw these ones away, man, since we got $500,000?
Well, I tell you what we can do. We can give it to the poor.
That's exactly what I say, too. We'll just donate those to the poor.
When prosecutors got their hands on those tapes, it was game over. The brothers had filmed their own evidence, practically narrating their rise and flaunting proof of their crimes. By the early 90s, the whole thing collapsed. Police raids turned up more than $1 million in cash and jewelry, 68 cars, and 250 guns. For law enforcement, that was proof they'd taken down one of the most powerful crack operations in the country. Larry and BJ were hit with kingpin charges, a label reserved for the biggest of the big. Larry, now in his 60s, is still sitting behind bars, a living relic of an era when crack turned cities upside down. And we see the cultural impact in New Jack City. The movie was designed to strip away any glamour from the drug trade. Director Mario Van Peebles made sure audiences didn't just see the money and the power, they also saw the destruction, the victims, the broken families. Critics compared it to the heavyweights like The Godfather and Goodfellas because it didn't shy away from showing the mechanics of crime and the inevitable downfall that comes with it. Rafael Perez. His story inspired the infamous Training Day, earning Denzel Washington an Oscar for his electrifying, unsettling performance as Alonzo Harris, a corrupt LAPD narcotics officer.
I'm the police! I'm you just live here!
Perez, born in Puerto Rico in 1967, joined the LAPD in 1989 and by 1995 was transferred to the Elite Rampart Division's Anti-Gang Crash Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums unit. It was here that Perez's moral compass spun completely off course. Denzel Washington himself stated he emulated Perez's style to bring authenticity to Alonzo, even going so far as to include the license plate ORP 967 on Alonzo's vehicle, a direct nod to Officer Rafael Perez, born in 1967. The reality of Perez's career makes Training Day look almost tame. He wasn't just a cop bending the rules, he was a cop who treated the badge like a license to steal. Once he got into Crash, an elite unit with way too much power and not enough oversight, Perez started playing both sides. He was supposed to be fighting gangs, but in truth, he was acting more like one of them. He dipped straight into the evidence lockers, stealing bricks of cutting them down and pushing them back onto the streets through his girlfriend.
The anti-gang unit known as Crash, Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums, had a reputation as hard-charging and aggressive.
Hey, that's a good ass game. Good shit. Man, get the fuck. Oh, fuck. We got action, gang. Hey, buddy over here pushing the shit out them buttons. I wonder what he doing. Fuck me, man. Oh, get the fuck on, man. Come on, D, we need to play. Come on, D, we need to play. Oh, get the fuck out of here. He gonna kick a fucking field goal. Oh.
But to civil rights lawyers, crash officers acted like another gang.
They were conducting themselves in a way that they were very much like a vigilante group, very much like the group of people, young people that they were after.
And it didn't stop with drugs. Perez built a career out of lies. He admitted to perjury hundreds of times, lying on the stand, falsifying reports, and framing people just to rack up stats. One of his darkest moves came in the case of Javier Ovando, a 19-year-old gang member who wasn't even armed. Perez and his partner Nino Durden shot the kid, left him paralyzed, and then spun a story in court that painted Ovando as the aggressor. The lies stuck. Ovando was sentenced to 23 years in prison for something he never did. Years later, when the truth came out, the city had to cut a $15 million check, the biggest police misconduct settlement Los Angeles had ever seen.
The most dramatic case to come to light is that of Javier Francisco Ovando. He spent nearly 3 years in prison before prosecutors discovered he'd been framed. Perez has since admitted Ovando was unarmed and that he and his partner Nino Durden planted a gun on Ovando after they shot him.
By the late 90s, the whole Rampart division was a powder keg waiting to explode. The crash unit wasn't just a task force, it was like a rogue gang wearing uniforms. Cops were out partying, drinking on the job, beating suspects, and sometimes worse. Perez himself was caught red-handed in 1998 for stealing cocaine out of evidence. Faced with years in prison, he flipped. That's when the scandal blew wide open. To save himself, Perez implicated more than 70 other officers, exposing a culture of corruption so deep it shocked even people who already had their doubts about the LAPD.
Rafael Perez, charged with stealing and selling 8 pounds of cocaine in 1998, Perez has implicated himself and other officers in order to reduce a possible 14-year sentence.
The fallout was massive. More than 100 wrongful convictions had to be tossed out because they were based on tainted arrests. The city eventually paid out around $125 million in lawsuits, and by 2000, the crash units were completely disbanded. But Perez's story branches out even further, tying him to some of the most infamous names in LA crime lore. His former partner, David Mack, was caught robbing a bank for $722,000 and was suspected of having ties to both the mob Piru Bloods and Death Row Records. Another officer in the circle, Kevin Gaines, was killed in a road rage incident, but investigators later tied him to Suge Knight and Death Row as well. All of these overlapping connections blurred the lines between law enforcement, street gangs, and the music industry in a way that felt almost unreal. That's why Training Day wasn't just fiction. It was rooted in the real dirt of the LAPD. Denzel's Alonzo Harris starts off as a rule-bending cop you could almost justify, but by the end, he's revealed to be a full-blown predator in uniform, a monster who thrived in the gray areas. Critics loved the performance because Denzel played it so smooth and magnetic that you wanted to believe him, right up until you couldn't anymore. O.G. Puddin, a founder of the Piru Boys, his story has been debated over the years to have inspired the infamous fan favorite Uncle Jerome from Snowfall. This theory is fueled by a perceived striking resemblance and Puddin's significant involvement in the early days of the crack empire in Los Angeles.
Teach a man how to squabble.
O.G. Puddin was known as a feared gangster, described as psychopathic and a killing machine. His reputation for violence was so intense that if someone spotted a car resembling his, they would scatter.
Puddin made Piru what it is today. Puddin and Tam, they were, I'll be honest, they were psychopaths. And I used to see them, I said, man, there'd be some good Crips, because these some straight killers.
And you had to be careful of that one person Puddin, man, because he had a green 69 Riviera. Ever we seen a green 69 Riviera, we would run for whatever, because we didn't know if that was Puddin or not.
Puddin came up in Los Angeles in the 1950s, born in 1954. His early life unfolded on 115th Street, near Nickerson Gardens, one of the roughest housing projects in the city. In 1972, his family moved to Compton, settling on Piru Street, a name that would soon become legendary in gang history. Compton at the time was overwhelmingly black, with jobs drying up and opportunities scarce. It was the perfect storm for gangs to rise. Back then, the Crips were running wild, led by founders like Raymond Washington and Tookie Williams. They were spreading fast, intimidating everyone in their path, swallowing up smaller neighborhoods. Puddin was just a scrawny teenager when he ran headfirst into the Crips. One day, he and Vincent Owens got into it with a group of Crips on Piru Street. They managed to hold their ground, and in the middle of the fight, someone shouted, "Don't mess with nobody from Piru Street." That moment became history. It sparked the formation of the Piru Boys, the set that would eventually link up with others to form what we now know as the Bloods. Puddin set the tone. The Crips had the numbers, so the Pirus had to fight smarter and meaner. They armed up, bought guns, and went to war. In 1972, Puddin and a few of his homies opened fire on a group of Crips, leaving one dead and several injured. That quadruple shooting marked the real beginning of the Blood Crip War in Compton, and it made Puddin the #1 target on every Crip's list. From there, his reputation exploded. People said if you even saw a car that looked like Puddin's, you ran. He had a personal hit list, and he wasn't shy about using it. He famously ambushed Tookie Williams himself, shooting him in the legs and leaving him laid up for months.
I know he surprised Tookie. Surprised the heck out of Tookie. Over there on Almond Street. Shot him. Tookie didn't expect that.
After his right-hand man Tam was killed by Crips, Puddin took his revenge to another level. He called it psychological warfare, shooting Crips in the legs, ankles, and feet instead of killing them outright, leaving them crippled and scared. But here's where it gets even crazier. Puddin struck a deal with the Compton Police Department. The understanding was simple. He'd keep the Black Panthers from organizing in Compton, and in return, the cops would look the other way on his drug operations. The deal worked. The Panthers never gained ground in Compton, and Puddin had space to build his empire. He wasn't just feared, he was making serious money. By the 80s, he was one of Compton's biggest drug right at the center of the crack explosion. But like many in that life, the walls eventually closed in. He caught a misconduct charge and served time. In 1987, he got busted selling to an undercover cop. Then in 1991, while still locked up, he and a crew of dealers testified against 6 LA narcs, accusing them of beating suspects, stealing money, and planting dope. Puddin even said a deputy pocketed $16,000 during a raid on his mother's house. His personal life was just as wild. After getting out, he got into a toxic relationship with Jewel, Death Row's first lady. Their love story was nothing like the fairy tales. It was jealousy, arguments, and violence. One day, it exploded. Jewel shot Puddin in the chest.
I had went to jail for shooting this Puddin who started the blood gang.
She said it was self-defense, that he had been abusing her, but not everybody bought her story. Others whispered it had more to do with Puddin's womanizing ways. He survived the shooting, but the damage lingered. The bullet changed his health forever. Years later, the complications caught up to him, and in 2006, at just 51, Puddin died from issues linked back to that wound. Daff Mosley. He's another person sources suggest that Uncle Jerome was actually inspired by. For many, his story, particularly intertwined with that of his wife, Jamaica Thompson, provides an even more grounded, raw blueprint for Jerome and Louis' on-screen dynamic.
Louis! Louis!
Daff Mosley's name doesn't ring out as loud as some of the other big figures in LA's drug history, but the streets knew who he was. What made Daff stand out wasn't just what he did, it was who he did it with. His partner, Jamaica Thompson, wasn't just his wife. She was his co-conspirator, his equal, and in many ways, the engine behind their rise. Together, they were a power couple, running things in a way people hadn't really seen before. Their hustle started young. Jamaica was still in high school when she and Daff were selling weed together. For two teenagers, it was quick money, the kind that gave them a taste of freedom most kids their age couldn't even dream of. But once they were out of school, weed felt small. They wanted more. According to Jamaica's own memoir, Queen Pin, their jump into the trade was downright shocking. In 1980, Jamaica claimed she performed a sensual favor for a bail bondsman named Willie, and in exchange, he fronted them their very first ounce of. That was the spark. From that single ounce, the two flipped and climbed, and soon they were moving up to 4 kilos a week. That same year, 1980, they sealed their bond by getting married. The newlyweds also bought themselves a nice home in Encino, California, far removed from the blocks they grew up on. 2 years later, they had a son, Anthony, and for a while it looked like they had beaten the odds. Young, rich, married, and building a life most people in their circle couldn't even imagine.
I went over to her house and she had a Ferrari, a turbo Porsche, I mean, every car that you could ever fantasize about. A brand new swimming pool.
Money was my power. Money was my control. And that's what controlled me, the money. And I wanted the money.
But the drug game rarely allows happy endings. On November 23, 1984, everything came crashing down. Daff was gunned down at a car wash in LA. His death was devastating for Jamaica, but yet, instead of crumbling, Daff's murder pushed Jamaica to step up and become even more ruthless. Jamaica Thompson. The original Queen Pin, whose story has also been widely believed to have inspired Aunt Louie, another central figure in Snowfall. Jamaica Thompson and her husband, Daff Mosley, started their hustle young, selling cannabis together while she was still in high school. But the game changed dramatically in 1980 when, through an explicit act with a bail bondsman named Willie, she secured her first ounce of. This bold, unforgiving entry propelled them rapidly up the ladder, soon pushing up to 4 kilos of coke a week. When Daff was murdered in 1984, it could have been the end of her story, but Jamaica was built different. She was determined to keep their empire alive, and she did. Jamaica started expanding in ways few women had ever done in that world. She didn't just stick to LA, she hit the road, building connections in Detroit, Atlanta, Illinois, and St. Louis. She opened up new pipelines, tapped into new markets, and turned herself into a national-level operator.
After the death of her husband, she starts to travel around. She's spreading out across the country.
She had connections all over, you know, the South, Atlanta, Detroit, Illinois, St. Louis.
I felt like the world was mine because now I'm doing it by myself.
Her hustle wasn't sloppy either. She used a hair distribution business as a cover for laundering money, blending her drug profits with a seemingly legitimate enterprise. On top of that, she cut out middlemen by going directly to suppliers, ensuring she kept the lion's share of her profits. By the late 80s, she was pulling in staggering amounts of money, reportedly up to $1 million in a week. The FBI called her one of the biggest female dealers in America. She wasn't just surviving without Daff, she was thriving, building her own legend. But success in the streets always carries an expiration date. Jameika's downfall came the same way it did for so many others, through betrayal. Her associate, Percy Cheese Bratton, got caught and decided to save himself by turning informant. That led to Jameika being indicted, and when the heat turned up, she went on the run. For years, she lived as a fugitive, carrying a gun in her Chanel purse, never able to fully relax, always looking over her shoulder.
She actually disappears, leaves her son. It tells you how serious this is.
At that time in my life, I carried a gun in my Chanel purse daily.
Her run finally ended in 1993 when she was arrested at her son Anthony's 6th grade graduation. That moment, being taken down in front of her child, was a brutal reminder of how deeply the game takes from those who play it.
She makes the mistake a mother would make, because a good trafficker would never have allowed her feelings for her son to get in the way of staying free from the law. She comes back to California for his graduation from school.
Convicted on multiple charges, Jameika was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, of which she served 12. She did hard time in a maximum security facility where she crossed paths with none other than Griselda Blanco, the Colombian Black Widow, and one of the deadliest women in the history of the drug game. For Jameika, prison wasn't just punishment, it became a place of transformation. She found religion, began ministering to other women behind bars, and started rethinking the choices that brought her there. When she was released in 2005, she didn't go back to the streets. Instead, she launched Second Chance Ministries in South Central LA, dedicating her life to helping others break free from the same traps she had once embraced. Her son Anthony took a completely different path, becoming a professional skateboarder. Frank Lucas. His story is based on the hit movie American Gangster, performed impeccably again by Denzel Washington as Frank Lucas. But even Lucas himself has said that the film was 99% Hollywood and 1% reality.
He don't mean nothing to me. What's he gonna do, go back home? I don't give a damn what he does.
Frank Lucas's life started in the kind of poverty that shapes you forever. He was born in LaGrange, North Carolina on September 9, 1930. When he was just 6 years old, he witnessed something that would scar him for life. His 15-year-old cousin, Obadiah, was murdered by the Ku Klux Klan for supposedly looking at a white woman the wrong way. It planted in him a burning hatred for white authority, and from that point on, Frank Lucas was determined to never be powerless again.
My cousin, he's 15 years old, and you know what they murdered him for? They murdered him for wrecked his eyeball.
With little education and barely able to read or write, Lucas's early years were wild. He robbed his employer of $400, burned the factory down, and fled north to Harlem by the mid-1940s. Once there, he claimed he became the protege of legendary Harlem gangster Bumpy Johnson. But this is one of those myths that depends on who you ask. Lucas insisted he spent 15 years at Bumpy's side as his driver and apprentice. But Bumpy's widow, Mamie Thatcher Johnson, shot that down, saying Bumpy never trusted Frank and barely gave him the time of day. Plus, Bumpy spent a decade of that supposed 15 years locked up. But what's not in dispute is that Frank Lucas rose fast. He found a way to cut out the Italian mafia middlemen who had dominated the heroin trade for decades. His boldest move was going directly to the source, the Golden Triangle in Southeast Asia. Teaming up with U.S. Army Sergeant Ike Atkinson, nicknamed Sergeant Smack, Lucas claimed they invented the Cadaver Connection, smuggling kilos of heroin in the coffins of dead American soldiers coming back from Vietnam. Lucas bragged about using fake coffins with secret compartments, each carrying up to 8 kilos of heroin. With each kilo allegedly netting him $300,000, he painted a picture of multi-million-dollar shipments arriving with every body bag. But most of that story is likely a tall tale. Atkinson himself later denied it, saying he smuggled drugs and hollowed out teak furniture instead. A federal judge even called the Cadaver Connection story one of the biggest hoaxes in drug trafficking history. Maybe it happened once or twice, but not on the scale Lucas bragged about. Still, whether it came in coffins or furniture, the heroin was real and potent. Lucas's brand, Blue Magic, was 98% pure and quickly became the hottest product in Harlem. He sold it cheaper than the competition, making sure addicts came to him. He recruited his brother straight out of North Carolina, his so-called country boys, and kept the operation tightly in the family. At his peak, Lucas claimed he was making $1 million a day, though the real numbers were probably far less. Still, he was rich enough to live like royalty, owning mansions, offshore accounts, expensive cars, and rubbing shoulders with celebrities. His downfall came the way it often does, with arrogance. In 1971, he attended a Muhammad Ali fight in Las Vegas, wearing a $100,000 chinchilla coat and a $10,000 matching hat, gifts from his wife. That one outfit made him stand out in a crowd of celebrities, and suddenly, law enforcement knew who to watch. As Lucas himself later admitted, "I left that fight a marked man." By 1975, the feds were ready. They raided his New Jersey home, seizing hundreds of thousands in cash, and arrested him. He was sentenced to 70 years in prison. But Frank Lucas wasn't about to rot away quietly. He flipped. He testified against more than 100 dealers, corrupt cops, and mobsters, cutting his sentence down drastically. He even ended up with Richie Roberts, the very prosecutor on this case, as his lawyer and later his friend. Roberts became godfather to Lucas's kids, a bizarre twist that only added to the legend. But Lucas couldn't stay clean. He got arrested again in 1984 for dealing and did another 7 years. By the time American Gangster came out in 2007, his myth had outgrown the messy reality. Denzel Washington portrayed him as suave, calculating, and disciplined, while prosecutors who dealt with the real Lucas described him as illiterate, violent, and often reckless. Still, one scene from the movie was ripped straight from the truth. Lucas really did shoot a rival named Tango 4 times in the head in broad daylight, cementing his reputation as a man who ruled with fear. Frank Lucas lived long enough to see himself become a Hollywood icon. He died in May 2019 at the age of 88. Alpo Martinez. His story was the real-life inspiration for Rico, played by Cameron in the classic Hood movie Paid in Full. Out of the trio, Alpo was the one who really embodied the reckless, loud, larger-than-life hustler. Born Alberto Geddes Martinez on June 8, 1966 in Spanish Harlem, Alpo grew up in a Puerto Rican household where English and Spanish flowed equally. That bilingual skill later gave him an edge in the drug game. He could bounce between cultures with ease, building connections everywhere. As a kid, Alpo wasn't the type to blend into the background. He was magnetic, always smiling, full of energy, and people naturally gravitated toward him. Every summer, he left Harlem through the Fresh Air Fund program, staying with a white family upstate. Those summers gave him a taste of a different life. Big backyards, calm neighborhoods, no sirens blaring every 5 minutes. But every time he came back to Harlem in the late 70s and early 80s, the streets were changing. Cocaine was everywhere. The cars were flashier, the jewelry was louder, and the game looked too good to resist. Alpo started small, sticking up drug dealers, taking chains, watches, and whatever cash he could grab. But he had ambition. By 1983, people in Harlem already knew his game. 2 years later, in 1985, he caught a weapons charge and had to do a year behind bars. Ironically, prison only leveled him up. Inside, he met Rich Porter, a Harlem golden boy already making big moves. Rich vouched for him when he got out, introducing him to AZ Faison. That link-up was legendary. AZ the brains, Rich the smooth operator, and Alpo the enforcer. Together, they became one of the most feared and respected drug crews Harlem had ever seen. Alpo loved the spotlight. He was pulling in $40,000 to $50,000 a week at his peak, but it wasn't just about the money, it was about the attention. He drove flashy cars, popped wheelies on dirt bikes through Harlem, and even had the nerve to kick police cars in broad daylight just to prove he was untouchable. That reckless energy made him a star in the streets, but it also painted a target on his back.
Alpo liked good things, nice things, but wow, get a motorcycle, buy a brand new bike where the crowd is at, do wheelies, crash it, and the next day go buy another motorcycle, thousands of dollars, 10,000, and just come uptown and light it up. But he liked it, that attention. And in the game, we don't need that. So I was always, oh, this crazy.
When he expanded into Washington, D.C., things got darker. Alpo became more ruthless, more paranoid, and way more violent. His name was tied to so many murders in D.C. that even other hustlers were scared to cross him. One of the coldest moves he made was plotting with Wayne Perry, his notorious hitman, to kill Damiano Montana Benson, a dealer who was sleeping with Alpo's wife. That hit showed just how personal and savage Alpo could be. But his most infamous move, the one that cemented his reputation as both a hustler and a traitor, was the murder of Rich Porter. Greed and paranoia ate at him. He started suspecting Rich of holding back a supplier, of keeping secrets. So he lured his so-called brother into a van, talked to him like nothing was wrong, asked him about coke, then pulled out a gun and shot him.
I was asking him like, yo, Rich, where did you get that coke from, man? That shit was good, because I wanted to make him comfortable. That shit was good as a motherfucker. He's like, I got it from my connect. So from there, I knew he was lying. I turned to my little man. I gave him the nod. Once I gave him the nod, my little man spent, because he was short, so he could stand up in the van. Next thing you heard was the 2 gunshots, bang, bang.
In later interviews, Alpo admitted it coldly, even saying, I just do that I loved, a dude I called my brother. Rich's body was found the next day, shot multiple times in the head and chest. Alpo's downfall came on November 7, 1991, the same day Magic Johnson announced his HIV diagnosis. Facing life without parole, Alpo made the ultimate street sin. He flipped. He cut a deal with the feds, snitching on his crew, his associates, and even Wayne Perry, the same man who had protected him. Perry ended up with 5 life sentences, all thanks to Alpo's testimony. In exchange, Alpo got 35 years, a light sentence compared to the bodies linked to his name. In 2015, he walked out of prison and slid into witness protection as Abraham Rodriguez in Maine. But Alpo couldn't resist the streets. Harlem called him back. He started showing his face again, doing Instagram videos, riding around like the old days, almost daring somebody to touch him. And on Halloween night, October 31st, 2021, somebody did. He was shot up in his Dodge Ram truck on Frederick Douglass Boulevard, right in Harlem. AZ Faison. His life was the blueprint for Ace and paid in full, the quieter hustler who wasn't as flashy but still commanded respect. AZ Faison Jr. was born on November 10, 1964 in Harlem. His childhood wasn't easy. At just 6 years old, a fire ripped through his family's tenement building, forcing them into a shelter for half a year. Eventually, they landed in the Sugar Hill section, but money was always tight. AZ struggled in school and dropped out by 9th grade, bouncing between odd jobs. He even worked at a local dry cleaner for 2 years, folding shirts and pressing pans, with no idea he'd one day become a kingpin. The turning point came in 1983. Like so many young hustlers, AZ saw Scarface and got hooked on the idea of living large. Around that time, he connected with a Dominican supplier who used the dry cleaner. That plug changed everything. AZ started small, but he was smart, disciplined, and ambitious. By 21, he was moving serious weight, earning up to $40,000 a week. That's when he linked back up with his childhood friend, Rich Porter, and Rich brought in Alpo. The trio locked down Harlem. But the game has no loyalty. On August 21st, 1987, AZ was at his aunt's spot, one of his stash houses, when it all went bad. A crew tried to rob him. In the chaos, AZ was shot 9 times. Somehow, he survived, but 3 other people in the house didn't. The most painful part was that the setup came from someone close. His sister's boyfriend, Kevin, had been holding a grudge because AZ once refused to put him in a deal. That betrayal cut deep, and it shattered AZ's trust forever.
And it was an incident where he wanted me to give, before he got locked up, he had wanted me to give some drugs to Rich. And I didn't. I gave it back to my sister, and I told him to give it back to him because I felt that dude was crazy, because the way the situation at that time, he was running from somebody.
Then came more heartbreak. In 1990, Rich Porter was murdered by Alpo. Around the same time, Rich's younger brother, William, was kidnapped and killed. Those losses pushed
Goodness
AZ
gracious, they just
point.
sliding and
He
sliding and
realized the
sliding
game
and
only led
sliding
to
and
betrayal,
sliding. Like,
death,
they
or
is going
prison.
crazy.
So he did what very few hustlers ever do. He walked away for good. Life after the streets gave AZ a second chapter. In 1989, he formed a rap group called Mob Style, rapping about the life he'd lived. At first, it was straight street tales, but later it shifted into conscious messages aimed at steering kids away from hustling. He put out an album in 1991 and even did a solo project, but his real legacy came in storytelling. He became a producer on Paid in Full, shaping how the world would remember his story. Later, he co-authored Game Over, The Rise and Transformation of a Harlem Hustler in 2007, and he even dropped a documentary of the same name. His story was so important, it was featured on C-SPAN's Book TV during a Harlem Book Fair panel. Rich Porter. The third of the trio, Rich Porter, inspired Mitch in Paid in Full. Out of all three, Rich was the one who truly embodied the fly guy hustler image. Born in Harlem, Rich jumped into the streets at just 12 years old. By the 80s, Harlem was a hotbed for young entrepreneurs in the drug game, and Rich quickly rose to the top. His style made him a legend. He never repeated an outfit, designer clothes every day, he had a fleet of cars and always kept himself fresh. To the neighborhood kids, he was a superstar, someone to look up to. To the hustlers, he was respected because he had money and he carried himself with class. Rich's bond with AZ was solid. They grew up together, made money together, and it was Rich who brought Alpo into the fold, vouching for him when others weren't sure. That decision, sadly, would cost him everything. The beginning of the end came in December 1989. Rich's 12-year-old brother, William, was kidnapped. The kidnappers didn't just demand money. They sent a cassette tape of William crying, begging for help, saying they cut off his finger. To prove it, they left a finger in a McDonald's bathroom. The cruelty was beyond comprehension. Rich tried desperately to raise the ransom. He was even planning to flip a big load of coke from AZ to get the money. But before he could save his brother, tragedy struck. On January 3, 1990, Rich was set up by Alpo. Alpo's paranoia and greed led him to believe Rich was holding back a top-tier supplier. In reality, Rich was just trying to save his little brother. Alpo lured him into a meeting, then killed him. The next day, Rich's body was found near Orchard Beach in the Bronx, shot multiple times. The heartbreak didn't stop there. Less than a month later, on January 28th, William's body was discovered, wrapped in 14 layers of plastic bags near a bike path in the Bronx. He had died from a blow to the head, and the ultimate betrayal was that the mastermind behind William's kidnapping wasn't a stranger. It was their own uncle, John Apple Porter, Rich and William's mother's brother, Haitian Jack. His charisma was so sharp it ended up inspiring one of Tupac's most iconic characters, Birdie in the classic film Above the Rim. Even Pac himself admitted that he wasn't just acting in that role, he was channeling somebody he actually knew, somebody who had taken him under his wing in New York. That somebody was Haitian Jack. Jack was even there on set, watching Pac, coaching him, almost studying his own reflection being brought to life. Birdie, the slick gangster with gold chains, leather jackets, and a smile that could slice steel, was a mirror of Jack's real-life swagger.
When me and Tupac met, he was doing a movie, Above the Rim. And I didn't know it at the time, but he was studying me for the role that he was playing in this movie.
Haitian Jack's journey started far from New York. He was born in Haiti, but as a boy, he made his way to Brooklyn, stepping into one of the toughest environments you could land in. At first, he couldn't speak a word of English, which made him easy prey, but Jack wasn't built to stay a victim for long. He adapted quick, picking up not just the language, but also the unwritten codes of the streets. Before long, he wasn't the one getting picked on. He was the one people called when something needed handling. Jack carved out a reputation as a fixer in the underworld. He wasn't just a stick-up guy or a hitman. He was an operator, a connector, someone who could make problems vanish or open doors most people didn't even know existed. That kind of skill, blending muscle with influence, earned him access to both worlds, the gritty street corners and the glamorous VIP rooms. You'd catch Jack in the company of legends, Madonna, Mike Tyson, Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder. By the time Jack linked up with Tupac in 1993, Pac was already a rising star, but Jack pulled him deeper into a world Pac had only heard about in whispers. Pac admired him, not just for his reputation, but for his elegance, his composure, the way he commanded any room he walked into. Jack showed him swagger, schooled him on the finer details of being larger than life.
You know what I'm saying? I used to tell him, look, man, you can't walk around here with your pants hanging off your ass, homie. Let me get you something real. Change up your gear a little bit, man. Pac and Armani, Dolce & Gabbana. You know, I bought him a Rolex.
But like most bonds in that world, theirs came with a cost. People had been warning Pac about Jack from the start. His cousin, William Lee Sane, knew Jack from the Tombs, Manhattan's criminal court back in '83, when Jack got locked up for shooting somebody. Even Mike Tyson, a man who had looked the meanest fighters on earth in the eye, told Pac to keep his distance. But Pac was Pac. He thought he was untouchable. That decision would haunt him. In 1993, Pac found himself wrapped in a sexual assault case involving Ayanna Jackson. He swore up and down it was a setup, blaming Haitian Jack as the mastermind behind it. And while Pac's life was spiraling, Jack seemed to come out of the situation relatively untouched. Things only got darker after the infamous Quad Studios shooting in November 1994. Pac got lit up with 5 bullets, stripped of his jewelry, and left for dead. From his hospital bed, he pointed fingers directly at Jack, along with Jimmy Henchman and Stretch. That's when Pac delivered his chilling warning. Trust no one, not even the ones who put a chain around your neck and call it love. The wildest part was that the shooting went down right in the middle of filming Above the Rim. Real-life chaos was bleeding into the movie itself. Paranoia gripped the set. Scenes had to be rewritten, and for some of Pac's wider shots, the crew even had to use a stand-in, a look-alike, because the star was literally recovering from gunfire.
With this murder, I'm starting to believe that David is gonna get away with this murder. Me too. Disclaimer. Okay, and I'm talking civilly and criminally. In terms of civil liabilities, we just learned that David is transferring all his properties into his mother's name. He just transferred 2 Texas homes into his mother's name. The only reason why somebody would do that is if they believe that they may be civilly liable at some point, right? And they want to get ahead.
That's crazy.
So
that's crazy. That's a chess move. Folks out here playing chess. See, one thing about weirdos is they don't be dumb. A lot of they ass be weird, but they don't be dumb. Do your homework on smart weirdos. So weirdos.
If the police keep dragging their feet, let's say this takes a couple of months. Well, David would successfully be able to transfer any asset he has, any current or future assets, into his mother's name, set up the system where them assets is probably in a trust and the trust belongs to the mom. I'll be real, civilly, even if they wanted to get something out of David, by the time the police get done their investigation, bruh, all his assets would probably be in a trust under his mom's name. Everything gone.
Right.
Even if you win a judgment or a default judgment or something,
what you gonna do?
You probably would never be able to claim that money.
Right.
Or those damages. Because the police is dragging their feet. In terms of criminal charges, if he did this, he may have done a good enough job to where his track is just too clean. This may be one of those things where the police believe he did it,
but they can't prove it.
They can't find nothing to
and
charge
that be the worst. That be the worst part about it. Like the police know you did it, but they can't. They can't by the court rules. They can't put to. It's an evil world we live in.
That's because the timeline that we thought this murder was committed in may be completely off by a mile. Celeste's body was discovered September 8th.
Right.
The logical assumption is she's probably been dead for a couple of days, maybe a week or 2.
Yeah.
Police came out and said they believe that she's been dead for an extensive amount of time, more than a couple of weeks.
Right.
So people thought, okay, maybe she's been dead for like 2 or 3 weeks. Come to find out, no, that's not the case. If she's been dead for a couple of weeks, there's only so much somebody could really do to kind of hide their tracks. Right? Again, they could do a lot, but there's only so much you could do in 2 or 3 weeks to hide your tracks and make sure that like all traces of you doing this is gone and disappear forever.
Right.
But come to find out, that timeline that we thought happened may have been wrong by a lot. I'm talking about it may have been wrong for about 9 months.
Damn.
There is a private investigator that was
hired. Oh yeah, we learned this already.
By the homeowner, in which like Celeste's body was discovered. Well, like because the Tesla was parked in front of a home, David lived there. The homeowner that David rented from, apparently he hired a private investigator. That private investigator,
sure.
He laid out a theory, and he believes that Celeste has been dead possibly since January.
have come to me, and I've learned a lot. Now, listen, a lot of it's circumstantial, right? But there are people that are directly in his orbit, and there are people that have photos and videos, and we've gotten a lot of photos and videos from inside the home itself. So we can put people at certain dates and times at the house, and there's a lot of them. It's in the thousands.
Do you know if Celeste was ever at that property?
So, what we recovered, we don't have any of her at that property. We have pictures of her and that.
And he probably was doing this, but like I said, the little motherfucker is smart. He's smart as hell. From all the videos we did on this crazy weirdo man, he's smart. He's not stupid. He had her at a different crib that they said was only a mile away from his crib. But he probably didn't let her come over his house because he didn't want the cameras because it's not his house, bro. He renting. So the cameras that the homeowner already has installed could have put him in the wrong spot. So either she was on disguise when she was coming in that crib or something, or she just never came.
You can buy David, we assume, because it's not on a camera phone, but these photos are on a regular camera at different locations, and it really makes me think that it's likely she had another place she was staying. I can tell you that there was a lot of time spent towards downtown LA, and I'll say the last photo that we have of Celeste is January 2nd, 2025.
And the last anything they have is January, because she was a runaway, so they can't say she went to school. She ain't got no job. She's 13, 14. Like, she don't got no damn nothing. So it's fucked up. But if a weirdo wanted to do something to a girl because they weird, it's like the circumstances in her life would have made it perfect for them to get away with. You know what I'm saying? On some weird shit, though. And that's the craziest part, bro. Because what are we going to do? If she wasn't on camera and she ain't got no pictures since January, it's like, okay, so what am I supposed to think that means?
Okay, now that's significant because we were wondering when, she was last seen alive. There was that surveillance footage of her seemingly running away from her neighborhood. And that
was September of 24, I believe. So we didn't have anything. We were like, where was this girl in 2025? But we do have a photo of her on July 2nd, early in the morning, July 2nd, 2025.
He clarified in the comment section
January
that
2nd.
He actually meant January 2nd.
Yeah, because he said January 1st.
So the last photo of Celeste is from January 2nd, 2025. And that's the last trace of Celeste. Because after January, she's gone. There's zero trace of Celeste anywhere.
Has anyone, and just to be clear.
Now listen, remember that, okay? The last time they seen this girl alive was January. Remember that shit, bro. Just remember that. Put it in your pocket. Don't forget it's there, okay?
You don't know more information about when she died, right?
No, okay. I don't have any information of how she died, when exactly she died. Investigations are always moving, and right now I tend to believe it happened a while ago, a long time ago. And I think January, February, things change. I mean, you can see it in the photos and everything. And I also think when I first started looking at this case, I'm very much an Occam's razor type of person where I think things are a lot easier than people try to make them sometimes, especially online, into these big things. And I thought this was going to be a tragic overdose, which it very well still could be. And they made a bad decision because they didn't want to expose a potential relationship and put her in this Tesla. And then maybe he thought he could get somebody to get rid of that car. And they were just like, no, I'm not doing it. And just got left there. But I will say this, there are some things that, and I'm talking physical.
Hey, that was just fucking, that was just insane. No bullshit. That was just insane.
There could have been greater plans as far as
now all that shit.
That was just insane, buddy.
If this nigga wasn't a weirdo who said he liked gore, if the girl wasn't 13 years old while he was a
fucking
grown-ass
ball
man,
by Josh
they've been
Allen.
going together for 3 years, 2 years, shit. If you told me all that, then I might believe you, shorty. But I am not going to believe that this overly weirdo of a man who was talking to this girl while she was 11, not 11, 11. who has multiple times said he liked Gore, who dropped a video called Romantic Homicide on her birthday. You're not about to tell me all this shit and she accidentally died on a drug overdose and he cut her body up to, like, no, bro, no. He said he likes Gore more than, he was a weirdo, bro. Like, he made it, like, he said Gore turned him on. He sold shirts with fucking blood on them. All right, stop
getting
it, bro.
rid of her.
Stop.
And it's scary, sadistic stuff. And that's why we're trying to learn more about that. I wish I could say more, but for obvious reasons I can't. But it doesn't have to do with how she died, but maybe how they were planning on ultimately getting rid of her, and how maybe that Tesla was just a holding spot at the time, and things just, you know, their timing was just off as far as getting this done. But there's a few things that were just like, will blow your mind.
You give a regular person a month to hide a body, they'll probably do a good enough job to where the police will have a very difficult time figuring out what happened with this murder.
You give a rich,
you give a regular person 2 months head start to hide a body, they'll probably get away with it. You give a multi-millionaire with every resource possible and an entourage of people willing to do whatever for him a year to hide a body and get rid of any trace he may have towards a murder. What you think is going to happen? What's currently happening right now if he did do it? The police is lost, bro. They can't figure out what's going on.
Oh, God.
They have no traces, bro, at all. They don't even know how she was murdered. That's because Celeste may have been dead since February.
Right.
The person who did it may have had a year head start to hide this. And if that person had millions of dollars.
9 months, shit.
Yeah, there is no trace because it's all gone. They had a year to strategically plan this out. And as he just said, he found some things in the house that hinted towards what the next plan was. And the next plan was to erase all trace, including the body.
Right.
Erase every possible trace. They already erased all the other traces because the Tesla is supposed to have video. There's no video from that Tesla. It's all gone. It's all gone.
How you even dilute?
That was just insane.
Apparently, though, there's more evidence towards Celeste may have been dead since February because apparently the vehicle registration for that Tesla, it expired in the beginning of the year. And that Tesla also had a Christmas tree air freshener in the car. Well, listen, man. Strategically, or like common sense will tell you, they probably stopped selling Christmas tree air fresheners back in December. Nobody is keeping a Christmas tree air freshener for 9 months. Like, yo, air fresheners don't even work that long. So, the vehicle registration that expired in the beginning of the year will tell you that it wasn't being used.
Right.
And why would somebody just stop using their brand new Tesla?
So let me ask you this.
And then he bought another one. That's what he said. He said he bought another one around that same time. That's why I remember I told y'all to keep that evidence, lock it down, put it in your pocket. Don't forget that it's there. I want you to take it out. Okay? I want you to look at it. They saying she could have been killed in January. The last picture of her alive was in January. His car registration over it is. It's so many fucking coincidences. Since we've been talking about David, it's been a lot of coincidences.
If you see when the car was parked there, have you seen anything to indicate that Celeste's body was transferred into that car after the car was parked there? Or in other words, do you believe that her body was in that car the minute it was parked in the location it was ultimately towed from?
So I'll say I have no evidence of a body being transferred before or after. There's no evidence of that at all. What I will say, when it was moved to that position, it was already like that. So that car had not been used in a very long time. It was super dirty, caked on dirt. I'll tell you, this was in late July. So it's bizarre because we also got media that the car was used a lot. David even spoke about it in Instagram videos. He took it to a detail shop and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, the very beginning of the year, that car, something happens, you know, and that car's doesn't show up anymore. It's not used. It seems to disappear. And then that red Tesla learned, which we didn't know until the search warrant was served, that there's a red Tesla in the garage, which I can tell you was leased on February 1st.
The last time Celeste was seen was in January. February 1st, David leases a new Tesla, a red one.
Crazy,
Completely
right?
stops driving the black Tesla that he was in love with.
Right.
Doesn't renew the registration for the black Tesla that was due in February.
Don't drive it no more. You can
Celeste
tell.
hadn't been seen since January. The timeline of when Celeste disappears lines up with the timeline of when the black Tesla stopped being used.
You ever had one of them days where everything seems to guarantee that you'll get what you deserve? You got paper, just like you.
By David. We could all use our brains here, people. To me,
again, bro. Again. Too many coincidences. It was coincidences before this shit happened. Now it's even more. I don't think it's ever been any. It ain't never been nothing. I ain't never seen nothing or talked about nothing, heard nothing that had this many coincidences in my life. In my life.
that right there is the biggest clue that Celeste has been dead since about January or February. The black Tesla was then driven and parked outside of David's Hollywood Hills home. It was there for about a month before Celeste's body was discovered because it was parked there, I think like July, like mid-July. Celeste's body was discovered September 8th. So Celeste seemingly was in that vehicle or in the trunk of that Tesla for about a month and some change before she was discovered. One of the things that really turned my gut, really gave me like a bad feeling inside, was when I found out about the police investigation and what the private investigator discovered when he searched the house.
Exactly.
So when the police went there, they searched the vents, they searched for blood, they searched everywhere. They could find no trace
of blood or
Celeste
nothing.
was killed in that home.
Right.
The private investigator goes and he searched the home. And what he discovers really made me say, yeah, it's a wrap. They may never find out what happened to this girl.
But now let's get to it. Okay, let's circle back to that Hollywood Hills rental property.
Did I hear
a private
this?
investigator, a PI, even got involved in this case. So according to LA Magazine, police had executed a search warrant on that property back on September 17th. So since David had been renting it for reportedly about $20,000 a month, a home that was owned by a man named Malden Trifonich. And officers reportedly collected electronics, computers. They searched the drains for traces of blood or tissue. At least that's the reporting from TMZ. Can't officially confirm that.
During another interview with News Nation, the private investigators hinted and broke down exactly why the police may have not found any type of blood, any tissues, or anything connecting Celeste to that house.
Let me ask you this, and I only have a couple seconds left, but you found some other suspicious things. The landlord, as you know, we obviously know now, allowed you into the house, and you saw some things in there that were very uncomfortable and very suspicious. I know you can't say certain things, but what can you tell us about what you saw inside the house?
Well, this is the landlord found it also, but there were some things in there that were hard to think about because these would be items that would be used if you wanted to get rid of a body, and there's really no other purpose for them at a house like this or anything. And they're expensive items, and so they weren't jokes, and but they weren't used. I'll tell you that they were still in the box. So I don't know how much we'll find out about that in the future because you can't charge somebody for thinking about doing something. But I think that they had a plan.
But it's important to know, because the first thing I said when I learned of that was that, well, that can't be possible because the LAPD raided the place and took everything. But you know for a fact that they photographed those things, and they're huge and heavy and expensive, and so they have
maybe like chainsaws or something. What the fuck could it be? That's the only thing I can think of for real. Like maybe like a chainsaw or like some crazy like industrial factory type of knife, or I don't know. I don't know.
Photographic evidence of those things.
This little girl died.
They said that we inquired about this, and they said that they photographed it. I don't know why they didn't take it. There's 2 items. I don't know why they didn't take them, but they said they photographed them.
2 very expensive things. Now, by things, I don't know if it was a product, a furnace, I don't
Right.
2 very expensive things that are used to get rid of bodies or the traces of a body. And that was probably going to be used to get rid of Celeste's body. But, you know, the car got impounded and we know the story from there.
Right.
But if they had the resources to get those 2 very expensive things and not even use it, what other things do you think they bought and used?
Right.
What other things do you feel like they got, they purchased, they used within the year that we believe Celeste was dead for? Or for 9 months, I should say. Come on, bruh. Come on. If y'all think this is going to be a slam dunk, if y'all think this is going to be
tough,
one of those
bro.
things where, yo, like the police gets a case within 2 weeks or 3, no, this is going to be a long investigation.
Yeah.
They had a lot of time.
They gonna make documentary about this shit, boy. Mark my words. We gonna be, I'm 27 now. We gonna be about 40, 50, 45. They gonna be making documentaries about this shit right here, boy. Netflix still probably gonna be around. They gonna be telling you.
Everything they did. They had a lot of time to make mistakes, go back and clean up those mistakes, then clean up the mistakes. Oh, they had so much time. I can't even begin to put in words what somebody with $1 million and 9 months can do when it comes to concealing the fact that they murdered somebody. At this point in time, the only hope the police got is to pray they made a mistake. Is to pray that, man, that they forgot to go over the 6 walkthrough. They dropped something, man, because without them making a mistake,
It's gonna get tough, bro. And I've been scared of that. I've been scared of him getting off. That's my biggest fear, him getting away with this shit, gang. Because I don't know what, only God really know. Him and God really know what happened. You know what I'm saying? And Celeste, of course. But nigga, he knows something, folks. He knows something. He knows something, bro.
Police, man. And especially too when you got millions of dollars, you got an entourage of people willing to kill for you when it comes to that. You don't even gotta be involved at all.
Right.
Oh my God, man. Now, the private investigator was at least, we have some progress and some good news.
Yeah, for sure.
He was at least able to ID the driver of the vehicle. The person who
But he ain't tell us though.
The Tesla in front of the house before it was there for a month, before it was impounded. The private investigator was able to ID that person. And apparently that person was part of David's entourage because that person was seen on a tour bus before they left.
But talk to me about the date of this video, July 29th, and talk to me about what you saw. What did you see in terms of the identity of the person driving through that open window?
So it's very clearly that Tesla one, because the Tesla has that tape on the rear spoiler for whatever reason. I don't know why it's there. And also it was just like it is in that picture. It was that dirty, except you could tell that they had run the windshield wiper like once to clear the dirt away so they could see. And it comes very close to the camera, although there is some motion blur, but you can see the person and you can see what they're wearing, something pretty distinctive. And there's photos that I have from 12 hours earlier, a person at the house wearing the same thing.
Right.
And I know that the viewers right now are screaming at the TV set saying, Ashley, ask him who it was.
I mean, I honestly wish I could tell you. I don't want to, I don't want to interfere with LAPD on that. And I think that's coming because we know a crime was committed 100%. Somebody concealed her body, and hey, maybe the reason I don't want to say the person's name is because maybe this person was just someone that was asked to move the car, and didn't know. I find that very hard to believe, and I doubt that's the case. But just in case, I'd rather LAPD make that announcement.
Well, and it's important for us to tell viewers as well that you turned all this material over to them. You're the one who found it. You're the one who took it to them. You're the one who said, and I connected it to the photos from just 12 hours earlier, and here's the clothing. It looks like this could be an ID.
Right. That's
July
crazy.
29th, important because that was the last day that David was in Los Angeles, right?
These coincidences are just crazy. So the day that the car got pulled up and parked in front of the crib with the little girl's cut up body in it, just so happens to be the same damn day that David went on tour. Just so happened. Come on, bro.
But before he went off on his tour. So he was there in Los Angeles on that day that drive happened.
Yeah, I've seen on one of his public social medias, he had put a video out where it was the first day on their new tour bus because they were going to San Francisco, I believe, for the first night of the concert series, and they did a video from inside the tour bus. So I believe hours after that car was moved, they actually got on the tour bus and headed to San Fran.
Oh, there goes the alibi. So we know David was in LA when that Tesla got parked.
Yeah.
And that Tesla didn't move for a month, but somehow her body was found in that Tesla's trunk. So the body had to have been there before that Tesla was parked. So the alibi of, man, he was on tour. Well, that's gone.
Exactly.
That's out the way. So that's the only positive news here.
That's the only thing they was kind of holding on to. You know what I'm saying? He was on tour when they found her.
Good news here. Now, we need to have the name of the person who was driving that Tesla.
For sure.
Y'all got to release it. Y'all have to release it. Right? I don't care if they didn't know. You tell us who told you to park that Tesla there. You tell us why was you parking that Tesla that wasn't registered, even though it didn't belong to you. Who told? Did David tell you? We got to know this information, man.
No, for sure.
But I'll be real, man. Once I heard that she could have possibly been dead since January or February, first off, what type of parents would wait 8 or 9 months without seeing their daughter? Now, the private investigator did take to his Twitter to address, I think, a family member claiming that they saw Celeste, like July-ish or something like that. They did further investigation and found out the family member lied or may have been mistaken, which to me is suspicious as well, because why would a family member lie about something like that? So the investigator says, I'm starting to believe that the information I received claiming a family member messaged with Celeste in July was incorrect. Rather, that's accidental or intentional by the family member. I'm not sure. There's no trace of Celeste after early 2025 that I can find. The parties attended by a family member were in 2024 during the missing but not really missing time.
Right.
So the family member and tells the guy, hey, I went to a party. I had contact with Celeste at a party in July. Come to find out, the party that they're saying they seen Celeste at
was
or
a year ago.
Celeste about was actually in 2024. The party was not in 2025. The Tesla's Texas registration expired in January of 2025. It was ticketed twice in late February in Hollywood, then not again until it was impounded. I can't find any trace of Celeste since very early 2025, although I fully admit that some sharp people on Reddit and YouTube are more dialed into her digital footprint. The Discord server activity and may have a signs of her in 2025 I'm not aware of. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if something may have happened to Celeste many months ago. Now, this was about 16 days ago, before his interview yesterday. So since then, he's done his investigation, he's done his work, and he has came to the conclusion that Celeste has been dead since about February.
Right.
But why would a family member lie about messaging her or seeing her at a party if the party was not even until 2024?
Right.
Now, there has been, again, this is all allegedly now, there's a kid, and we covered this a while back, where he alleged, David was actually showing up in a community that like Celeste was from and paying people like to be quiet.
Right. We seen that
about
picture.
seeing her with him. So is it possible that maybe a family member got paid off? I would not imagine which family member will accept payment for something like this. Okay.
Yeah.
But y'all let me know in the comment section.
That'd be crazy. But maybe he ain't. Maybe I don't know, bro. Maybe I'm thinking maybe he didn't like tell the family member what he was really paying him off for. If that makes sense, like you get what I'm saying. Like I'm just paying you off to not say nothing, but you don't know that she dead though, type shit. I don't know, man. This shit stressing me the fuck out.
Yep. All right, gang.